My name is Jada. I am 42 years old and somehow still healing from wounds my family inflicted. As a successful corporate director, I escaped their toxicity but maintained occasional contact. Last Sunday, they invited me to an upscale brunch to catch up. Between mimosas and avocado toast, my mother leaned forward smirking. You know, Jada, you are lucky we even include you. Pity goes a long way. I simply sipped my coffee and smiled. That night, I logged in, disabled every family credit account, and emailed my lawyer about selling the cabin. But the true revenge started at my corporate gala. Tonight was supposed to be my crowning achievement. The Vanguard Financial Gala was the most prestigious corporate event of the year. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over hundreds of Wall Street elites dressed in custom tuxedos and designer gowns. I sat at the front table wearing a tailored emerald gown I bought specifically for this moment. Beside me sat Aaliyah. She is 19 years old and the daughter of my late best friend. She wore a modest, thrifted dress, but carried herself with more grace than anyone else in the room. There was an empty chair on my other side. It was reserved for my 15-year-old son, Malik. I checked my phone expecting a message saying he was stuck in traffic. Instead, I saw a photo that made my blood run cold. It was a picture of Malik standing on the deck of a luxury yacht in Cabo San Lucas. He was holding a glass of sparkling cider. Standing next to him was my sister Chloe, wearing a designer swimsuit. Next to her was her husband Terrence, flashing his diamond watch. And standing right behind my son with a smug grin was Darius. Darius is Malik's biological father. The same man who abandoned me when I was 9 months pregnant and had not paid a single dime in child support for 15 years. Underneath the photo was a text message from Malik. It read, "Mom, I cannot make it. Uncle Terrence rented a yacht in Cabo. Aunt Chloe says this is how real black excellence lives, not sitting at a boring desk for 20 years. Sorry." I stared at the screen. My own son had chosen the fake flashy lifestyle of my relatives over his mother. He chose the deadbeat father who had just magically reappeared to enjoy a free vacation. I did not cry. Crying was a luxury I stopped affording myself a long time ago. My family has always been obsessed with appearances. My mother Beatrice cares more about her status at the Oak Ridge Country Club than she cares about her own flesh and blood. When I was 22 years old, pregnant and broke, she threw my belongings onto the front lawn. She told the neighbors I was an embarrassment to our family legacy. She constantly compared me to Chloe. Chloe was the golden child because she married Terrence. Terrence called himself a venture capitalist. He leased foreign cars, bought VIP tables at clubs, and threw cash around to impress people. My mother worshipped him. She told Malik that his Uncle Terrence was a real man of success while I was just a corporate slave. For 15 years, I worked 80 hours a week. I clawed my way up from a junior analyst to the director of mergers and acquisitions. I built my wealth quietly. I did not buy leased sports cars or fake designer bags. I bought real estate. I bought stocks. I secured my future. But my family constantly brainwashed my son. They bought him expensive sneakers and told him his mother was just a boring desk worker who did not understand the hustle. I locked my phone and placed it in my evening bag. I turned to Aaliyah. Her eyes were wide with concern. She had seen the photo. "Miss Jada," she whispered, "is Malik not coming?" "No," I said calmly. "He is exactly where he wants to be. But tonight is not about people who run away. It is about people who stay." The master of ceremonies stepped up to the podium. His voice echoed through the massive ballroom. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "tonight we honor a woman whose brilliance and dedication have generated billions for our firm. Please welcome to the stage our Director of Mergers and Acquisitions, Jada, to receive her 20-year service award." The applause was deafening. The event was being broadcast live on the National Financial Network. I knew my mother and my sister were probably watching from the yacht, waiting to laugh at my little plaque. They always mocked my corporate awards. I stood up. Aaliyah squeezed my hand. I walked up the velvet stairs and approached the podium. The CEO handed me a heavy glass plaque. I took it, but I did not smile. I placed the plaque face down on the podium. The room grew quiet. People sensed a shift in the atmosphere. "Thank you," I said, leaning into the microphone. 20 years is a long time to dedicate to a single company. I have sacrificed sleep vacations and personal time to build portfolios and execute acquisitions. Many people in my own family mocked my dedication. They told my son that working a steady job is for failures. They believe true success is driving a leased car and throwing money you do not have. A murmur rippled through the crowd. The executives in the front row looked confused. I continued speaking directly into the camera. But real wealth is not loud. Real power does not need to show off on social media. Tonight, I am supposed to accept this 20-year service award, but I am declining it. Gasps echoed through the room. I am declining it because as of this morning, the board of directors has voted on a new leadership structure. I am no longer the director of mergers and acquisitions. I am officially the new chief executive officer of Vanguard Financial. The silence in the room was absolute. Then the front row of board members stood up and began clapping. Soon the entire ballroom erupted in a standing ovation. I raised my hand to quiet them down. As the new CEO, my very first executive action is to exercise my discretionary budget. I have established the Vanguard Young Entrepreneur Grant. It is a fully funded $1 million cash grant designed to support a young person who understands the value of hard work, loyalty, and integrity. I looked down at the table where Aaliyah was sitting. "Aaliyah, please come up here," I said. She looked terrified. She pointed to herself, mouthing the word, "me." I nodded. She slowly stood up and walked toward the stage. The camera followed her every move. She climbed the stairs and stood next to me, shaking. "Aaliyah lost her mother 5 years ago," I told the audience. "She has been working 2 jobs to pay her way through college. While other kids her age expect luxury to be handed to them on a silver platter, Aaliyah has scrubbed floors, tutored students, and maintained a perfect grade point average. She represents everything my company stands for. Therefore, I am awarding her the $1 million grant right now on live television." Aaliyah covered her face with her hands and burst into tears. She threw her arms around me, hugging me tightly. The crowd went wild. Flashes from cameras illuminated the stage. I hugged her back, looking directly into the main television camera. "This is what real success looks like," I said into the microphone. "It is not about taking shortcuts or tearing other people down to look good. It is about rewarding loyalty and building a solid foundation." After the ceremony, Aaliyah and I were escorted out through a private exit by my security team. She was still in shock, clutching the presentation check to her chest. "Miss Jada," she cried, "I cannot believe this. You just changed my entire life. I can pay off my tuition. I can start my business. I do not even know what to say." "You do not have to say anything," I told her, smiling. "You earned it by being a good person. Go home and celebrate. My security team will drive you safely." I stepped into my waiting town car and closed the door. The leather seats were cool and quiet. I poured myself a glass of sparkling water from the minibar. I opened my purse and took out my phone. The screen was lit up with notifications. 74 missed calls. 25 calls were from my mother, Beatrice. 30 calls were from my sister, Chloe. 15 calls were from Terrence. 4 calls were from my son, Malik. There were also dozens of text messages. I opened the family group chat. The tone had drastically changed from the arrogant messages sent just 2 hours ago. Chloe had texted Jada, "Are you serious right now? You gave $1 million to a stranger. Terrence needs that money for his startup. Call me back immediately." Beatrice had texted, "You are a disgrace to this family. You humiliate us by giving charity to that street girl instead of your own blood. Terrence is your brother. Pick up the phone." Malik had texted, "Mom, please answer. Uncle Terrence is really mad." I did not reply to any of them. I simply blocked my mother and my sister for the night. I leaned back against the seat and looked out the window as the city lights blurred past. They thought I was just a corporate drone they could mock and disrespect. They thought they could turn my own son against me, and I would just sit back and take it. They were wrong. Tomorrow morning they would fly back from Cabo. They would come to my home expecting to bully me into giving them money. They would try to use Malik as leverage. But I was ready for them. I had spent 20 years analyzing financial data, digging through corporate debt, and executing hostile takeovers. I knew exactly how to dismantle a fraudulent business. I knew exactly how to expose fake wealth. And I knew exactly what Terrence was hiding behind his fake luxury life. My phone buzzed again. It was an email from my lead corporate attorney. The subject line read, "Asset Acquisition Complete." I opened the email. It contained a single document attachment. It was the deed to the Oak Ridge Country Club where my mother spent all her time pretending to be high society. It also contained the foreclosure documents for every single luxury car Terrence had leased under his fake company name. I smiled, taking a sip of my water. The game had just begun and I was holding all the winning cards. They wanted to play a game of wealth and status. I was going to show them exactly what happens when you anger the person who actually owns the bank. Less than 24 hours later, I was back in the United States, standing in the kitchen of my newly purchased penthouse. The $8 million apartment occupied the entire top floor of a secure high-rise downtown. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city skyline. The marble countertops gleamed under the soft, recessed lighting. I was pouring myself a cup of coffee when the private elevator pinged. The doors slid open, revealing my mother, Beatrice, my sister Chloe, and my brother-in-law Terrence. They had taken the first available red-eye flight back from Cabo, dragging their designer luggage behind them. "Naomi, you have lost your mind!" my mother screamed before she even stepped fully off the elevator. She marched into my living room, pointing a manicured finger at me. "You embarrassed this entire family on national television. You gave $1 million to a street girl instead of investing in your own brother-in-law. Terrence's family. He is building a legacy. And you threw our money away on charity to make yourself look like some kind of savior." I set my coffee mug down on the counter. "Our money, Mother," I asked calmly. "I earned that money. I built that portfolio. You and Chloe have never worked a corporate day in your lives." Chloe threw her bright pink designer bag onto my kitchen island with a loud smack. It was a Birkin, a bag that cost more than most people's cars. She crossed her arms and glared at me. "You have always been bitter," she scoffed. "You are just mad because Terrence chose me. You ended up a single mother with a deadbeat ex while I got the venture capitalist. You thought giving away $1 million would make us look bad, but you just look desperate for attention." I did not raise my voice. I leaned forward, resting my hands on the cool marble of the island. "I am not bitter, Chloe," I said smoothly. "I am just wondering how you are going to pay for that Birkin bag when Terrence's credit cards are maxed out." Terrence stepped forward, his chest puffed out. His designer suit looked wrinkled from the flight. "You watch your mouth, Naomi," he snapped. "My credit is impeccable. My firm is closing a $5 million seed round next week. You need to call your bank and cancel that check you gave to Aliyah. We need that capital to finalize the acquisition." I looked at him. Really looked at him. I saw the sweat forming on his forehead. I saw the slight tremor in his hands. He was desperate. "You mean the acquisition of more leased sports cars, Terrence?" I asked. "Or the acquisition of more fake followers for your Instagram page?" "What are you talking about?" my mother demanded. "Terrence is a successful investor. He just bought me a brand new Mercedes last month." I opened the top drawer of the kitchen island. I pulled out a thick manila folder and dropped it onto the marble counter right next to Chloe's expensive bag. The folder landed with a heavy thud. "Let us talk about that Mercedes, Mother," I said. "Terrence did not buy it. He leased it. And he did not lease it under his name. He leased it under yours. You signed the paperwork because he told you it was for tax purposes. But he has not made a single payment in 4 months." My mother's face went completely pale. "That is a lie," she whispered. I flipped the folder open. I slid a document across the counter toward her. It was a formal notice from the dealership. "They are repossessing the car on Tuesday," I told her. "Your credit score is currently hovering around 500. You are officially high risk." Terrence lunged forward, trying to snatch the paper. "Do not look at that, Beatrice. She has fabricated these documents. She is just trying to cause drama because she is jealous." My private security guard, a tall man named Marcus, stepped out from the hallway. He did not say a word. He just stood behind Terrence, crossing his muscular arms. Terrence froze, his hand hovering over the counter. He slowly backed away. I turned my attention back to the folder. I pulled out another document. This one had a bright red stamp on the top right corner. "Let us look at your venture capital firm, Terrence," I said. "You claim to manage millions in assets. But according to these public financial filings, your firm has 0 active investments. You operate out of a shared workspace that you rent by the hour. And your primary source of income seems to be high-interest personal loans." Chloe grabbed her husband's arm. "Terrence, what is she talking about? You told me we were closing on that mansion in the hills next month." "There is no mansion, Chloe," I said gently, though I felt no sympathy for her. "He cannot even afford the rent on your current house." I pulled out a third document. "This is a foreclosure notice. Your bank initiated proceedings 3 weeks ago. You have exactly 30 days before the sheriff comes to change the locks." Chloe stared at the paper. Her perfectly manicured hands began to shake. She looked at Terrence. "Tell me she is lying," she demanded. "Tell me this is just one of her sick corporate games." Terrence would not look her in the eye. He stared at the marble floor, his jaw clenched tight. I flipped to the very last page of the dossier. This was the document that had kept me awake for 3 nights straight. This was the reason I decided to destroy them completely rather than just walking away. "But the worst part isn't the cars, Terrence," I said, my voice dropping to a low, dangerous whisper. "The worst part isn't the fake business or the foreclosed house." I looked directly at my mother, who was still clutching the car repossession notice. "The worst part," I continued, "is the $200,000 you stole from Malik's college fund to pay off your gambling debts." The silence in the penthouse was suffocating. Only the faint hum of the city traffic below could be heard through the thick glass windows. Chloe gasped, stepping away from Terrence as if he were suddenly toxic. "You stole from Malik!" she shrieked. My mother dropped the paper. She grabbed the edge of the counter, breathing heavily. "Naomi, that cannot be true. Terrence is managing Malik's fund. He is growing the principal." "He drained the principal, Mother," I said. "I audited the account last week. The trust fund I set up for my son, the one I allowed Terrence to manage, because you begged me to keep the money in the family, has exactly $14.32 left in it." Terrence finally looked up. His eyes were wild-cornered. "I was going to put it back," he yelled. I had a sure thing in Vegas. The market shifted. I just needed a little more time to recoup the losses. "If you had just given me that $1,000,000 today, I could have fixed everything." "You gambled away your nephew's future," I said. "You stole the money I bled for, the money I saved while you were busy playing rich on the internet." Before Terrence could offer another pathetic excuse, the private elevator pinged again. The doors opened. Darius walked in. He looked exactly the same as he did 15 years ago when he walked out on me. He wore a cheap suit that he probably thought looked expensive. He smelled of cheap cologne and desperation. He strolled into my penthouse with the unearned confidence of a man who believed the world owed him a living. "Well, well, well," Darius said, clapping his hands slowly. "Look at this place. My baby mama really moved up in the world. I guess 20 years at a desk finally paid off." I stared at him. The sheer audacity of this man showing up in my home after abandoning his child was staggering. "How did you get past security?" I asked coldly. "Terrence gave me the access code," Darius replied, grinning. "He said this was a family meeting. And since I am the father of your child, I figure I have a right to be here." "You lost your rights the day you walked out," I said. "Get out of my house before I have you arrested for trespassing." Darius laughed. He walked over to the kitchen island and leaned against it right next to Chloe. "Now, Jada, let us not be hasty. I saw you on television last night. You are the new CEO. That means a big salary, huge bonuses. Since I am Malik's father, I think it is only fair that I get half of that. You know, to provide for my son. I need to secure his future." I looked at Terrence. Terrence was staring at his shoes, refusing to meet my gaze. I understood immediately. "You brought him here," I said to Terrence. "You brought this deadbeat here to extort me." Terrence finally looked up. "We had a deal," he muttered. "Darius was going to help me convince you to invest the $1,000,000 in my firm. I promised him a cut." I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound that echoed through the large room. You hired my deadbeat ex as a consultant to help launder stolen college funds. You really are a special kind of stupid, Terrence. Darius slammed his hand on the counter. You listen to me, Jada. You might have money now, but Malik loves me. We hung out on the yacht. We bonded. He thinks I am the cool dad, and he thinks you are a boring control freak. If you do not pay me, I will take him away from you. I will sue for full custody. He is already brainwashed to hate you anyway. Darius smirked, crossing his arms. I hold the cards here. Pay up or lose your son. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I did not look angry. I did not look scared. I looked completely serene. You think you hold the cards, Darius? I asked softly. You think brainwashing a 15-year-old boy gives you leverage in my house? I pressed a single button on my phone screen. A small green light illuminated on the smart speaker sitting on the kitchen counter. Another green light flickered on the speaker near the television. I had wired the entire penthouse for audio before they arrived. I did not need to win an argument with you, Darius, I said. I just needed you to admit what you were doing. I turned toward the hallway leading to the guest bedrooms. You can come out now, Malik, I called out. The color drained from Darius's face. Terrence took a step back. Chloe covered her mouth. Footsteps echoed softly against the hardwood floor. Malik walked slowly out of the hallway. He was wearing the expensive designer sneakers Terrence had bought him, but his face was pale, his eyes were red and filled with tears. He had been standing there the entire time. He had heard every single word. Section 3, 1,500 words. Terrence scrambled to gather the scattered documents. He reached for the folder, trying to snatch it back into his possession. I did not even have to raise a hand. Marcus stepped forward with lethal precision, placing one large hand firmly on the folder and pressing it flat against the marble. Terrence froze. He looked at Marcus, then back at me. He was breathing heavily. His eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape that did not exist. You have no right to steal my private financial records, Terrence stammered. I can have you arrested for corporate espionage. This is illegal. You hacked into my files. I let out a slow, controlled laugh. I did not hack into anything, Terrence. You used your fake company to apply for a small business loan 3 weeks ago. You submitted these exact financial records to a regional bank. That regional bank was just acquired by Vanguard Financial, my company, the one I now run. As the CEO, I reviewed the high-risk loan applications yesterday. Your file was sitting right on the top of my desk. Chloe pushed past Terrence and leaned over the counter. She stared at the documents, trying to make sense of the numbers. Her face twisted into a mask of pure confusion and rising panic. Terrence, what is this? She demanded, pointing a manicured finger at a spreadsheet. This says our net worth is negative $2 million. You told me we had $5 million in liquid assets. You told me the yacht in Cabo was paid for by the company. Terrence grabbed her arm, trying to pull her away. Chloe, do not listen to her. She is manipulating the numbers. It is just corporate jargon. Venture capital works differently than her boring banking job. You have to spend money to make money. We are just in a leverage phase. I shook my head slowly. A leverage phase, I repeated. Is that what you call maxing out 6 different credit cards to buy designer watches and rent luxury villas? Because the bank calls it fraud. My mother Beatrice finally spoke up. Her voice was uncharacteristically quiet. She looked at Terrence with wide eyes. Terrence, she said slowly, my Mercedes. You said you bought it for me. You said it was a gift to thank me for being such a supportive mother-in-law. You presented it to me at the country club in front of all my friends. I slid the lease agreement across the counter toward her. The paper stopped right in front of her, shaking hands. He presented you with a lease, mother, I corrected. A lease he put in your name. He used your social security number. He paid the down payment with a stolen credit card, and then he set the monthly autopay to draw from an account that has been overdrawn since last November. Beatrice stared at the paper. Her eyes scanned the fine print. She saw her own signature at the bottom. She saw the repossession warning printed in bold red letters across the top. Her entire identity was built on the perception of wealth. The thought of a repo truck pulling into the Oak Ridge Country Club to tow away her car was a fate worse than death to her. "You lied to me," Beatrice whispered, her voice trembling. "You told me you were a millionaire." "I am a millionaire," Terrence shouted, his voice cracking with desperation. "The market is just slow right now. The investments are tied up in overseas accounts. I just need a cash injection to free up the capital." I leaned forward, bracing my hands on the island. "Stop lying, Terrence," I said, my voice slicing through the room like a scalpel. "You do not have overseas accounts. You have offshore gambling debts. You owe $300,000 to a sports betting syndicate based in the Bahamas. You have been taking out high-interest loans from predatory lenders just to pay the minimum interest on your gambling losses." Chloe let out a sharp gasp. She covered her mouth, staring at her husband as if she had never seen him before. "Gambling," she whispered. "You told me you were traveling for investor meetings. You told me those trips to Vegas were for networking." "They were networking," Terrence insisted, though he was backing away from her now. "I was meeting with high-net-worth individuals." "You do not understand how this world works, Chloe." I pulled out the next document from the folder. This one was different. It was not a bank statement or a foreclosure notice. It was a wire transfer receipt. The amount printed on it was exactly $200,000. "I understand exactly how your world works, Terrence," I said. "I understand that when the loan sharks came calling, you panicked. You realized you had no assets left to borrow against. You had maxed out Chloe's credit. You had destroyed Mother's credit. You had nothing left. So you looked for the one pot of money you still had access to." I held up the wire transfer receipt. "You stole from a 15-year-old boy," I said, my voice deadly quiet. "You took the access I gave you to Malik's college trust fund and you wired the entire balance to a shell company in Delaware. A shell company that immediately transferred the funds to a sportsbook." Chloe began to cry. Real, genuine tears of absolute terror. She grabbed Terrence by the lapels of his wrinkled suit jacket. "You stole from Malik!" she screamed, shaking him. "You stole my nephew's college money! Terrence, how could you do this? We are going to go to jail. She is going to send us to jail." Terrence pushed her away. His facade had completely crumbled. He looked pathetic. He looked like a rat caught in a trap. He turned to me, his hands clasped together in a pleading gesture. "Jada, please," he begged. "You have to understand. I was trying to provide for this family. I was trying to give Chloe the life she deserves, the life your mother wanted for her. I just made a few bad bets. I can fix this. You just became the CEO of Vanguard. You make millions now. You can replace the college fund. You can pay off the loans. $1 million is nothing to you. It is pocket change." I stared at him. The absolute audacity of this man was breathtaking. He had stolen my son's future, ruined my mother's credit, and lied to my sister. And his solution was for me to bail him out because I had worked hard enough to afford it. "You think I'm going to pay your gambling debts, Terrence?" I asked. "You think I'm going to reward you for stealing from my son? We are family." Beatrice suddenly cried out, finding her voice again. She rushed forward and grabbed my arm. "Jada, you have to help him. If Terrence goes down, we all go down. Chloe will lose her house. I will lose my car. The people at the country club will find out. We will be ruined. You cannot let your own sister become homeless." I pulled my arm away from her grasp. "You should have thought about that before you allowed him to manage Malik's money, Mother. You begged me to let him handle the trust fund. You said it was insulting that I kept my money at Vanguard instead of supporting a black-owned business in the family. You called me a traitor to my race because I wanted a certified financial planner instead of your favorite son-in-law." Beatrice flinched. "I did not know," she stammered. "I thought he was successful. He always had such nice things." "Nice things are easy to get when you do not pay for them," I said. Terrence dropped to his knees. He actually dropped to his knees on the marble floor of my kitchen. "Jada, please," he sobbed. "The people I owe money to. They are not like banks. They do not just foreclose on houses, they hurt people. They told me if I do not have the money by the end of the month, they are going to come after me. I brought Darius here because he knows people who can offer protection. But I need cash." I looked down at him, feeling absolutely nothing. No pity, no anger, just a cold, clinical calculation of the situation. I had spent years analyzing toxic assets. Right now, I was looking at the most toxic asset of all. Darius stepped forward from the corner of the kitchen. He had been unusually quiet, watching his meal ticket fall apart. He adjusted the collar of his cheap suit and tried to put on his best intimidating glare. "Look," Jada Darius said, trying to sound tough. "Terrence is in deep, and if he goes down, it is going to look real bad for you." The new CEO of Vanguard Financial, having her brother-in-law arrested for wire fraud, having her sister evicted, having her mother's car repossessed. That is a bad look for a corporate executive. The board of directors will not like that kind of scandal. I turned to Darius. I tilted my head, studying him like a bug under a microscope. "You think you understand corporate optics, Darius?" I asked. "You think the board of directors cares about my deadbeat relatives. The board cares about profit margins. They care about ruthless efficiency. Exposing a fraudster and recovering stolen assets does not make me look bad. It makes me look exactly like the kind of CEO they hired me to be." Darius scowled. He took a step closer, trying to use his physical size to intimidate me. Marcus, my security guard, immediately stepped between us, but I waved him off. I was not afraid of Darius. I had stopped being afraid of him the day he walked out of the hospital while I was in labor. "You are not going to let your own son's father go down with this ship," Darius sneered. "Because if Terrence goes down, I go down. He owes me money too. And Malik loves me. I am his dad. He wants to live with me. He told me so on the yacht." That was the hook. That was the piece of leverage they thought they still had. They thought they controlled my son. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone again. The green light on the smart speaker on the counter was still glowing. The audio feed was still active. I looked past Darius, past Terrence kneeling on the floor, past my mother and sister who were weeping in the corner. I looked directly at the hallway leading to the guest bedrooms. The silence stretched for a long, agonizing moment. Then the sound of slow, heavy footsteps echoed against the hardwood floor. Everyone turned to look. Malik walked out of the shadows. He looked small. He looked like the 15-year-old boy. He was not the arrogant teenager who had texted me from Cabo. His face was pale and streaked with tears. He had been standing in the hallway the entire time. He had heard every single word of the conversation. He stopped at the edge of the kitchen, staring at the family he had idolized. He stared at the father who claimed to love him. He stared at the uncle who had stolen his future. "Malik," I said, my voice gentle but firm, "do you understand what you just heard?" Darius crossed the room, leaving dirty footprints from his cheap sneakers on the pristine marble. He sneered at Terrence, then looked directly at me. "See, Jada," he said, dragging out the syllables of my name like a taunt. "I always told you that boy needed a strong male role model. He needed someone who understood the streets, someone who knew how the world really works, not a mother who hides behind a desk pushing papers all day." He walked over to Malik. He threw a heavy arm over my son's shoulders, pulling him close. Malik flinched, but he did not pull away. "Tell her, Malik," Darius coaxed. "Tell your mother what we talked about on the yacht. Tell her how you want to come live with your old man. We are going to start a business together. Terrence is going to fund it as soon as you get him that cash injection. Right, Terrence?" Terrence nodded frantically. "Yes, exactly. A family business. We keep the wealth in the family." I looked at my son. His eyes were red-rimmed and wide with confusion. He looked from the floor up to his grandmother, then to his aunt, and finally to the man whose arm was slung heavily around his neck. The man who had convinced him that a mother's hard work was something to be ashamed of. "You want to talk about how the world really works, Darius?" I asked, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Let us talk about it. Let us talk about why you are actually here." I pulled another piece of paper from my pocket. It was not from the folder. It was a document my private investigator had emailed me 2 hours ago. "Darius, you owe $40,000 in back child support to 2 different women in Atlanta," I read aloud. "You have a warrant out for your arrest in Georgia for passing bad checks. You do not want to start a business with my son. You want to use my son as a human shield to get access to my money so you can pay off your own debts before you end up in a federal penitentiary." Darius stiffened. His hand dropped from Malik's shoulder. "That is a lie," he shouted, pointing a finger at me. "She is lying, Malik. She always lies to make me look bad. She is just a bitter baby mama who could not keep her man." "A bitter baby mama," I repeated. I stepped out from behind the kitchen island. I walked slowly toward him. Marcus, my security guard, moved with me, matching my pace, but I raised a hand signaling him to stay back. I wanted Darius to look me in the eye. "You walked out on me when I was 9 months pregnant," I said, my voice steady and cold. "You left me in a studio apartment with an eviction notice taped to the door and $50 in my bank account. You did not leave because I was bitter. You left because you were a coward who could not handle the responsibility of a child. And the only reason you are standing in my $8 million penthouse right now is because Terrence, the fake venture capitalist, hired you as a consultant to help him launder the money he stole from the very son you abandoned." Chloe gasped again. She stumbled backward, her designer heels clicking against the floor. "Terrence, you hired him," she shrieked. "You brought my sister's deadbeat ex into our business." Terrence held up his hands defensively. "I needed someone who knew how to move money quickly without triggering banking alerts. Darius knew people. He said he had connections." Darius scowled, shoving Terrence hard in the chest. "You told me the money was clean, you idiot. You told me it was an early withdrawal from a trust. You did not tell me you stole it from a kid." "I stole it from a kid," Terrence yelled, shoving him back. "You are the one who told me the sports book in the Bahamas was a guaranteed return. You are the one who placed the bets." Beatrice covered her ears. "Stop it," she cried. "Both of you stop it right now. We are a family. We do not air our dirty laundry like this. Jada, you are tearing this family apart." I turned to my mother. The sheer delusion she operated under was staggering. "I am tearing the family apart, Mother," I asked. "I am not the one who stole $200,000. I am not the one who leased a Mercedes under your name and ruined your credit. I am not the one who brought a wanted fugitive into this house to extort money." "But you can fix it," Beatrice pleaded, grabbing my arm again. Her grip was tight, desperate. "Jada, you have the money. You gave $1 million to a stranger. Terrence just made a mistake. He is a good man. He provides for Chloe. He gives us status. If you just pay off the debts and replace the trust fund, we can go back to normal. We can forget this ever happened." I stared at her. The woman who had thrown me out onto the street when I needed her most was now begging me to save the man who had robbed her blind just so she could keep pretending to be wealthy at the country club. I gently pried her fingers off my arm. "Normal, Mother?" I asked. "Your normal is a lie. Your status is a lease. Your entire life is built on debt and deception. I am not going to finance your delusions anymore." Darius laughed, a harsh, ugly sound that broke the tension in the room. "See, Malik," he sneered, turning back to my son. "I told you, she does not care about anyone but herself. She has millions of dollars, and she is going to let your own grandmother lose her car. She is going to let your aunt lose her house. She is a selfish corporate drone. Come with me, son. We do not need her." He reached out to grab Malik's arm again. But this time Malik stepped back. He moved out of Darius's reach. Malik looked at the floor. His hands were trembling. He slowly raised his head and looked at his father. Then he looked at Terrence. Finally, his gaze settled on me. "Mom." Malik whispered, his voice cracking. "Is it true? Did Uncle Terrence really steal my college money?" "Yes, Malik," I said softly. I showed them the wire transfer receipts. He emptied the account to pay off gambling debts he accrued with Darius. Malik turned to Terrence. "You told me you were investing it," he said, his voice rising. "You told me you were going to triple the principal so I could buy a Porsche when I turned 18. You promised me." Terrence could not meet his nephew's eyes. He looked away, muttering something about market fluctuations and temporary setbacks. Malik turned to Chloe. "You knew," he asked her. "You told me Mom was a failure because she worked a desk job. You told me Uncle Terrence was the real deal. Did you know he was stealing from me to buy your bags?" Chloe burst into tears again, shaking her head frantically. I did not know Malik. I swear. I thought he was successful. I thought we were rich. Malik looked at his grandmother. Beatrice tried to offer a comforting smile, but it looked more like a grimace. Malik, honey. She started reaching out a hand. We are family. We have to forgive. Malik slapped her hand away. You knew, he asked, his voice trembling with anger. You knew Uncle Terence was broke, and you still let him handle my money. You let him take the money my mom saved for me. I did not know about the gambling, Beatrice cried. I just wanted to support black businesses. I wanted to keep the wealth in the family. Malik finally turned to Darius, the man he had idolized just hours ago on a yacht in Cabo. The man who had bought him expensive sneakers and told him he did not need to listen to his mother. You helped him steal it, Malik said. You took my money and you bet it on sports. I was trying to flip it for you, son, Darius said, holding his hands up defensively. I was trying to get you a better return than some boring mutual fund. I was doing it for you. Malik shook his head slowly. The realization was crashing down on him. The entire foundation of his worldview, the flashy cars, the designer clothes, the arrogant attitude, it was all built on a massive lie. The people he thought were successful were parasites. The people he thought loved him had simply used him to fund their fake lifestyle. You are a liar, Malik shouted, pointing at Darius. You are all liars. You used my money. You used me. Darius's face darkened. He dropped the friendly father act instantly. You watch your tone, boy, he snapped, stepping forward. I am your father. You will respect me. He raised his hand as if to strike Malik. He did not get the chance. Marcus moved faster than I thought a man his size could move. He grabbed Darius by the wrist, twisting his arm behind his back and slamming him face first into the marble counter. Darius yelled out in pain, struggling against the security guard's grip. Let him go, Darius grunted. I have rights. You have nothing, I said, stepping right up to his face. You have no rights to this boy. You have no rights to my money, and you certainly have no right to raise your hand in my house. I looked at Marcus. Call the police, I ordered. Tell them we have a trespasser who just attempted to assault a minor. And tell them he has active warrants in Georgia. I am sure they will be very interested in speaking with him. Darius panicked. Wait, Jada, wait, he pleaded, struggling against Marcus's hold. Do not call the cops. I will leave. I will go right now. You will never see me again. I swear. I looked at him with utter disgust. I knew you would run, I said. It is the only thing you are good at. Marcus, let him go. But make sure he uses the service elevator. I do not want him touching the same buttons I use. Marcus released Darius's arm. Darius stumbled backward, rubbing his wrist. He shot one last venomous glare at me, then looked at Malik. You are making a mistake, boy, Darius sneered. You are choosing a boring life. You are going to end up just like her, a corporate slave. Malik did not flinch. He looked his father dead in the eye. I would rather be a corporate slave than a thief, he said quietly. Darius scoffed, turning on his heel and marching toward the private elevator. The doors opened and he stepped inside. We watched the numbers tick down as the elevator descended, carrying the last trace of my past mistakes out of my life forever. The room was silent again, save for Chloe's quiet sobbing. The grand illusion of the black elite had been thoroughly shattered. Terence was ruined. Chloe was facing eviction. Beatrice was facing repossession, and Darius was back on the run. Malik slowly turned back to me. His shoulders slumped. The expensive designer jacket Terence had bought him seemed to hang heavy on his frame. He looked exhausted. He looked broken. He took a step toward me, then another. He fell to his knees on the marble floor, right where Terence had knelt just moments before. Mom, he sobbed, burying his face in his hands. Mom, I am so sorry. I am so sorry I listened to them. I am so sorry I missed your ceremony. I thought they were right. I thought you were just holding me back. Please, Mom, please forgive me. Can I come live with you here? I will be good. I promise. I will follow your rules. I will do whatever you want. I looked down at my son. The boy I had worked 20 years to provide for. The boy who had texted me a picture of himself toasting with champagne while I sat alone at a gala meant to celebrate my life's work. My heart ached for him, but my mind remained clear and focused. I had spent 2 decades watching my family destroy themselves with entitlement and fake luxury. I was not going to let that happen to my son. I looked at him with eyes made of steel. No, I said. Section 5. 1,500 words. Malik looked from my face to the faces of the relatives who had poisoned his mind. His grandmother, his aunt, his uncle, and his father. He had seen the truth. The illusion of his perfect wealthy family had shattered completely. I walked around the kitchen island. I stopped 2 feet in front of him. Marcus remained close, keeping a watchful eye on Darius and Terence. You heard everything I said, my voice quiet but firm. You heard them admit to stealing your college fund. You heard them admit to using you to get to my money. Malik nodded slowly. A tear slid down his cheek. He wiped it away with the back of his hand, his shoulders shaking. Mom, I am so sorry, he whispered. I didn't know. I thought they were telling the truth. I thought you just didn't want me to have nice things. Nice things, I repeated. I pointed to Terence. Uncle Terence has nice things. Does he look successful to you right now? Malik looked at Terence, who was still kneeling on the marble floor. Terence looked pathetic. His expensive suit was crumpled. His posture was defeated. He looked like exactly what he was, a fraud. I turned my attention to my mother. Beatrice was standing near the window, her arms wrapped around herself as if trying to hold her crumbling world together. Beatrice took a step toward Malik. Her face was desperate. Malik's sweetheart, she pleaded. Your mother is twisting the truth. We made some mistakes, but we are still your family. We took you to Cabo. We showed you how real successful people live. We want the best for you. We have to stick together. She reached out to hug him. Malik stepped back. His expression hardened. The sadness in his eyes was replaced by a sudden, sharp anger. Do not touch me, Malik said, his voice rising. Beatrice flinched as if she had been slapped. Malik, she gasped. How can you speak to your grandmother that way? Because you are a liar, Malik shouted. You are all liars. You took my college money. The money Mom saved for me since I was a baby. You let Uncle Terence steal it to pay for his fake cars and his gambling, and you tried to make me hate my own mother so I wouldn't find out. Chloe started crying louder. We didn't mean to hurt you, Malik, she sobbed. We just wanted you to fit in. We wanted you to have the lifestyle you deserve. The lifestyle you deserve, I said, cutting off Chloe's pathetic excuses. I looked at Malik. You want to know what kind of lifestyle you deserve, Malik. You deserve the lifestyle you earn. You deserve the lifestyle you build with your own 2 hands. Not a lifestyle built on stolen money and leased cars. Darius, who had been silent since Marcus restrained him, decided to try one last desperate play. Come on, Malik, Darius sneered. You are not really going to let her talk to you like that, are you? She is trying to control you. She is trying to turn you into a corporate slave. You and me, we are going to start that business. We do not need her money. I have connections. I know people. I know. Malik turned to his father, the man he had idolized just hours ago, the man who had bought him expensive sneakers and told him he didn't need to listen to his mother. You don't know anyone, Malik said, his voice dripping with disgust. You owe child support to 2 other women. You have warrants out for your arrest. You are not a businessman. You are a deadbeat. Darius's face darkened. He lunged forward, raising his hand. You watch your mouth, boy, he snarled. Marcus intercepted him before he could take 2 steps. The security guard shoved Darius backward, sending him crashing into the kitchen counter. Do not try that again, Marcus warned, his voice low and dangerous. I stepped in front of Malik, shielding him from Darius. I looked at the man who had abandoned me 15 years ago. You are done, Darius, I said. You have played your hand and you lost. You thought you could use my son against me. You thought you could walk into my home and intimidate me. But you are nothing. You have always been nothing. Now get out of my house before I have Marcus throw you off the balcony. Darius rubbed his shoulder, scowling at me. He looked at Malik, then back at me. You are going to regret this, Jada, he spat. I highly doubt that I replied. Marcus grabbed Darius by the arm and escorted him toward the private elevator. The doors opened and Marcus shoved him inside. Darius stumbled, catching his balance just as the doors slid shut. The indicator light blinked as the elevator descended. 1 parasite gone. 3 more to go. I turned my attention back to the rest of the family. Terrence was still kneeling on the floor. Chloe was leaning against the counter, sobbing into her hands. Beatrice was staring at the floor, her face pale and drawn. "Well, Terrence," I said, my voice breaking the heavy silence. "What is your next move? Are you going to call your loan sharks in the Bahamas and tell them you need more time? Or are you going to finally admit that you are completely ruined?" Terrence slowly looked up. His eyes were red and pleading. "Jada, please," he whispered. "You have to help me. They are going to kill me. If I do not get them the money by the end of the week, they are going to come after Chloe. They know where we live." I crossed my arms. "They know where your foreclosed house is, Terrence. I am sure the sheriff will be happy to greet them when they arrive to change the locks." Chloe grabbed Terrence's shoulder, shaking him. "We are going to lose the house," she screamed. "Terrence, you promised me we were fine. You promised me the business was booming." "The business was never booming, Chloe," I said. "It never existed. It was a shell company designed to secure high-interest loans. He used your credit. He used Mother's credit. He used Malik's trust fund. He burned down everything around him just to keep up appearances on Instagram." Beatrice finally spoke. Her voice was weak, trembling. "Jada, please," she said. "I am your mother. You cannot let them take my car. You cannot let them humiliate me at the country club. My friends will find out. The entire committee will know I am broke." I looked at the woman who had thrown me out when I was pregnant, the woman who had called me an embarrassment, the woman who had told my son I was a failure. "Your friends at the country club only like you because they think you are rich, Mother," I said. "They do not care about you. They care about your status. And since your status was funded by stolen money and maxed out credit cards, I think it is only fitting that they see the truth." Beatrice covered her face with her hands, sobbing quietly. "My perfect life," she cried. "My legacy. It is all gone." "You never had a legacy, Mother," I said. "You had a delusion." Malik had been standing quietly watching the devastation unfold. He had seen the reality of the people he had admired. He had seen the consequences of their actions. He walked past Terrence and Chloe. He stopped right in front of me. He looked up, his eyes full of remorse and shame. He slowly sank to his knees. The expensive designer sneakers squeaked against the marble floor. "Mom," Malik whispered, his voice cracking. "Mom, I am so sorry." I looked down at him. My heart ached, but I kept my expression neutral. "I am so sorry I listened to them." He sobbed, grabbing the hem of my blazer. "I am so sorry I missed your ceremony. I thought they were right. I thought you were just holding me back. I wanted the cars and the clothes. I wanted to be like Uncle Terrence. I didn't know he was a thief." Tears streamed down his face. "Please, Mom, please forgive me. Can I come live with you here? In this penthouse. I will be good. I promise. I will follow your rules. I will do my homework. I will not ask for anything. Just please let me stay with you." He looked around the massive $8 million apartment, the floor-to-ceiling windows, the custom furniture, the sheer undeniable wealth that surrounded us. He wanted the comfort. He wanted the security. He wanted the lifestyle he thought Terrence was providing, but now saw that I actually owned. I looked at the boy I had worked 20 years to provide for. The boy who had texted me a picture of himself toasting with champagne while I sat alone at a gala meant to celebrate my life's work. He was apologizing. He was begging. But he was also looking at the luxury around him with hungry eyes. I had spent 2 decades watching my family destroy themselves with entitlement and fake luxury. I had watched them sacrifice integrity for status. I was not going to let that happen to my son. I was not going to let him trade one false idol for another. I looked down at him with eyes made of steel. "No," I said. I looked at my son Malik kneeling on the expensive marble floor of my penthouse. He was begging for forgiveness, begging for the comfortable lifestyle he thought he had lost when he realized his Uncle Terence was a complete fraud. I had spent 2 decades watching my family destroy themselves with their absurd entitlement and fake luxury. I had watched them constantly sacrifice their integrity just to maintain a certain status in front of strangers. I was absolutely not going to let that happen to my only son. I was not going to let him trade one false idol for another just because I was the one holding the checkbook now. I looked down at him with eyes made of steel. "No, Malik," I said firmly. Malik blinked, staring up at me in shock. He slowly got to his feet. "Mom, what do you mean no?" he asked, his voice trembling. "I said I was sorry. I said I would follow your rules. I just want to come home." "You do not want to come home, Malik," I corrected him, keeping my voice steady. "You want to live in an $8 million penthouse. You want to enjoy the benefits of my 20 years of corporate hustle without doing any of the actual work. You chose to skip my celebration because you thought I was a boring desk worker. You chose to go to Cabo because Aunt Chloe told you that was real black excellence. Now that you see the truth, you want to switch sides. That is not how life works." Chloe, who was still crying near the kitchen island, let out a loud, dramatic scoff. "You really are a heartless mother, Jada," she yelled, pointing a finger at me. "Your own son is begging you for a place to live, and you are turning him away. You are punishing him because you are jealous that he liked Terrence more than you. You have always been cold and unfeeling." I ignored Chloe entirely. I kept my focus completely on Malik. "You want to be a man, Malik?" I asked him. "You want to learn how real money is made. It is not made by leasing cars and gambling in the Bahamas. It is made by showing up every single day and doing the work." I walked over to the kitchen drawer and pulled out a small set of keys. I tossed them onto the counter right next to Terrence's foreclosure notices. "Those are the keys to my old apartment," I told Malik. "It is a tiny one-bedroom unit in the South Ward. It does not have a doorman. It does not have floor-to-ceiling windows. It is exactly where I lived when I was grinding my way up the corporate ladder. The rent is paid for the next 3 months. You are going to live there." Malik looked at the keys as if they were toxic. "But Mom," he stammered, "the South Ward. That is a rough neighborhood. All my friends live in the suburbs. Your friends in the suburbs are not going to pay your bills." "Malik," I replied coldly. I reached out and took his wrist, gently pulling his hand forward. I took the brand new designer smartphone out of his palm, the one Terrence had bought him to replace the sensible phone I had provided. I dropped the expensive device into the trash can next to the island. "What are you doing?" Malik cried, reaching toward the trash. "All my contacts are in there." I handed him a cheap prepaid flip phone and a loaded city bus pass. "You will not be needing those contacts," I explained. "Your credit cards are officially cut off. Your allowance is permanently suspended. You want to earn your way back into my life. Start by working at the grocery store on Fifth Avenue. I have already called the manager and secured you an interview for the night shift bagging groceries. You start on Monday." Beatrice threw her hands up in the air, looking absolutely appalled. "Jada, this is child abuse," she shrieked. "You cannot force a 15-year-old boy to live in the South Ward and bag groceries. He is a Vanguard heir now. He should be attending private school and networking at the country club. What will people say when they see my grandson working at a supermarket? They will say he is finally learning the value of a hard-earned dollar mother," I shot back. "And if you have a problem with it, you can take him to live with you in your foreclosed house." Beatrice snapped her mouth shut. She had no house to offer. She had no car. She had nothing. Malik looked at the flip phone in his hand. He looked at the bus pass. He looked at the keys to the tiny apartment. He finally understood the gravity of his choices. He had disrespected the woman who had truly provided for him, and now he was going to pay the price. "I am not doing this to punish you, Malik," I said, my tone softening just a fraction. "I am doing this to save you. Terrence and Chloe almost ruined your life. I am going to make sure you learn how to build a real one. When you can prove to me that you understand the value of honest work, we can talk about your future. Until then, you are on your own." I turned away from my son and faced the rest of the parasites polluting my beautiful kitchen. The family reunion is officially over, I announced loudly. Marcus, please escort these individuals out of my building. If they resist, call the police and have them arrested for trespassing. Marcus stepped forward, cracking his knuckles. Time to go, he said, his deep voice echoing in the large room. Terrence scrambled to his feet, his face red with fury and humiliation. You think you have won, Jada, he screamed, spit flying from his mouth. You think you can just take my documents and ruin my life? I will sue you for defamation. I will sue you for corporate espionage. I will drag your name through the mud. I have lawyers. I have people who can destroy you. I let out a low, chilling laugh. I leaned casually against the marble counter, crossing my arms. You are going to sue me, Terrence? I asked, a smirk playing on my lips. With what money? You do not even have enough cash to buy a value meal at a drive-thru. And more importantly, you cannot sue the bank that owns your debt. Terrence froze. What are you talking about? He demanded, his voice trembling. I bought your primary lender this morning, Terrence, I said, delivering the final devastating blow. The shady holding company that provided your high-interest personal loans. Vanguard Financial acquired them in a hostile takeover at 8 a.m. I own your debt. I own the mortgage on Chloe's house. I own the lease on Mother's car. I own every single financial asset you mistakenly thought was yours. Terrence's jaw dropped. The realization hit him like a freight train. He was not just broke, he was entirely at my mercy. Now get out of my penthouse, I commanded, before I decide to accelerate the collections process and have you living in a cardboard box by midnight. Marcus grabbed Terrence by the collar of his wrinkled suit and shoved him toward the private elevator. Chloe grabbed her expensive Birkin bag and scrambled after him, sobbing hysterically. Beatrice followed close behind, her head bowed, her perfect country club facade completely shattered. Malik lingered for a moment. He looked at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and newfound respect. He didn't say another word. He just clutched the keys, the bus pass, and the flip phone. He turned and walked into the elevator with the rest of them. The doors slid shut. The penthouse was finally quiet. The toxic energy had been purged from my home. I walked over to the floor-to-ceiling windows and looked out over the glittering city skyline. I had won the battle, but the war was far from over. I knew they would try to strike back. They were desperate, and desperate people do incredibly stupid things. 2 days later, I was sitting in my corner office at Vanguard Financial. The mahogany desk was massive. The view of the financial district was breathtaking. I was reviewing a quarterly earnings report when my executive assistant buzzed my intercom. Ms. Jada, my assistant said, her voice tight with tension. There is a man here to see you. He says his name is Terrence and he has his legal counsel with him. They are demanding a meeting immediately. They say they have a court order. I smiled, sipping my black coffee. Send them in, I replied calmly. Let us see what kind of cheap lawyer Terrence managed to scrounge up on a maxed-out credit card. The heavy double doors to my office swung open. Terrence marched in, looking slightly more put together than he had in my penthouse. He was wearing a different suit, though I noticed the cuffs were slightly frayed. Beside him stood a short, balding man carrying a battered leather briefcase. Jada, Terrence said, puffing out his chest, trying to look intimidating. This is my attorney, Mr. Vance. We are here to serve you with a formal lawsuit. I didn't even bother to stand up from my desk. I leaned back in my ergonomic leather chair, steepling my fingers. Is that so, Terrence? I asked, my voice dripping with bored amusement. And what exactly are you suing me for today? Hurt feelings. Mr. Vance stepped forward, clearing his throat nervously. Ms. Jada, we are filing a suit for tortious interference, defamation of character, and illegal acquisition of private financial documents. My client claims you orchestrated a targeted campaign to ruin his business reputation. I let out a sharp laugh. His business reputation, I repeated. Mr. Vance, did your client inform you that his business has generated 0 revenue in 3 years? Did he inform you that he stole $200,000 from a minor's trust fund to pay off illegal gambling debts in the Bahamas? Mr. Vance blinked, looking confusedly at Terrence. Terrence's face flushed a deep, angry red. "That is a lie," Terrence shouted. "You have no proof of any gambling debts." I pressed a button on my desk console. My lead corporate attorney, a shark of a woman named Sarah, walked through the side door connecting to the legal department. She was carrying a thick stack of manila folders. She dropped them onto the small conference table in the center of my office. "Actually, Terrence, we have all the proof," Sarah said smoothly. "We have the wire transfer receipts. We have the IP addresses connecting your fake venture capital firm to the offshore sports book. We also have confirmation that you committed wire fraud across state lines, which is a federal offense carrying a minimum sentence of 20 years in prison." Terrence stumbled backward, bumping into a leather armchair. He looked at Mr. Vance, but his cheap lawyer was already packing his briefcase, clearly realizing he was entirely out of his depth. "You cannot do this to me," Terrence whispered, his bravado completely gone. I stood up from my desk and walked slowly around to face him. "I can do whatever I want, Terrence," I said coldly. "I have the resources of $1 billion financial institution behind me. You have a rented suit and a lawyer who looks like he wants to run out the door. So here is the deal I'm going to offer you. You have exactly 60 seconds to make a choice." 2 days later, I was sitting behind my massive mahogany desk at Vanguard Financial. The view of the city skyline from my corner office was breathtaking, but my focus was entirely on the quarterly reports spread out before me. The quiet hum of the corporate environment was exactly the kind of peace I needed after the chaos of the weekend. My sanctuary, however, was about to be invaded. My executive assistant buzzed my intercom, her voice tight with professional anxiety. "Miss Jada," she said carefully, "there is a man here to see you. He says his name is Terrence, and he has his legal counsel with him. They are demanding a meeting immediately. They say they have a court order and will not leave until you are served." I did not flinch. I took a slow sip of my black coffee, relishing the bitter warmth. "Send them in," I replied calmly. "Let us see what kind of cheap lawyer Terrence managed to scrounge up on a maxed-out credit card." The heavy double doors to my office swung open. Terrence marched in looking slightly more put together than he had in my penthouse. He was wearing a different suit, though I noticed the cuffs were slightly frayed. Beside him stood a short, balding man carrying a battered leather briefcase that had seen better days. Terrence puffed out his chest, trying to project an air of intimidation that completely failed in the sleek, modern space of my office. "Jada," Terrence said loudly, "this is my attorney, Mr. Vance. We are here to serve you with a formal lawsuit." I didn't even bother to stand up from my desk. I leaned back in my ergonomic leather chair, steepling my fingers. "Is that so, Terrence?" I asked, my voice dripping with bored amusement. "And what exactly are you suing me for today?" "Hurt feelings." Mr. Vance stepped forward, clearing his throat nervously. He adjusted his crooked tie. "Ms. Jada, we are filing a suit for tortious interference, defamation of character, and illegal acquisition of private financial documents. My client claims you orchestrated a targeted malicious campaign to completely ruin his business reputation and sabotage his ongoing investments." I let out a sharp, genuinely amused laugh. "His business reputation," I repeated. "Mr. Vance, did your client inform you that his business has generated absolutely zero revenue in 3 years? Did he inform you that he stole $200,000 from a minor's trust fund to pay off illegal gambling debts in the Bahamas?" Mr. Vance blinked, looking confusedly at Terrence. Terrence's face flushed a deep, angry red. "That is a lie," Terrence shouted, pointing a finger at me. "You have no proof of any gambling debts. You are just trying to intimidate my legal counsel." I pressed a single button on my desk console. My lead corporate attorney, a shark of a woman named Sarah, walked through the side door connecting directly to the legal department. She was carrying a thick stack of manila folders. She dropped them onto the small glass conference table in the center of my office. The sound echoed loudly in the quiet room. "Actually, Terrence, we have all the proof," Sarah said smoothly, adjusting her glasses. "We have the wire transfer receipts. We have the IP addresses connecting your fake venture capital firm to the offshore sports book. We also have confirmation that you committed wire fraud across state lines, which, as I am sure Mr. Vance knows, is a federal offense carrying a minimum sentence of 20 years in federal prison." Terrence stumbled backward, physically bumping into a leather armchair. He looked at Mr. Vance, but his cheap lawyer was already hurriedly packing his briefcase, clearly realizing he was entirely out of his depth. "You cannot do this to me," Terrence whispered, his bravado completely gone. I stood up from my desk and walked slowly around to face him. "I can do whatever I want, Terrence," I said coldly. "I have the resources of $1 billion financial institution behind me. You have a rented suit and a lawyer who looks like he wants to run out the door. So here is the deal I am going to offer you. You have exactly 60 seconds to make a choice." Sarah slid a prepared legal document across the glass table. "You are going to drop this frivolous lawsuit immediately," I instructed. "You are going to sign over every single remaining asset you possess to Vanguard Financial to cover the massive debts you owe us. And most importantly, you are going to sign a full confession detailing exactly how you stole my son's college fund. If you sign these papers, I will let you walk out of this building and file for standard bankruptcy. If you refuse, I am handing this flash drive of your gambling records directly over to the FBI field office down the street." Terrence stared at the papers. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold the pen Mr. Vance offered him. He looked at me, his eyes filled with absolute terror. "You are going to leave me with nothing," he choked out. "You left yourself with nothing, Terrence," I replied. "I am just formalizing the paperwork. Now sign it." He signed the documents, his signature a messy scrawl. Mr. Vance grabbed his briefcase and practically sprinted out of the office. Terrence stood there for a moment, completely broken. He turned and walked out the door, dragging his feet, looking like a dead man walking. I watched him go, feeling a profound sense of satisfaction. The financial cancer had been excised, but I knew the battle was not entirely over. Chloe was still out there, and my sister was not the type to surrender her fake status quietly. Later that evening, my security team intercepted a mass email sent out to the Oak Ridge Country Club mailing list. It was an invitation to a massive charity gala, hosted by none other than Chloe and my mother Beatrice. They were desperately trying to prove they were still high society. The invitation promised a lavish evening of philanthropy and Black excellence. They were trying to spin a narrative that they were giving back to the community while completely ignoring the fact that their own homes were being foreclosed on. I read the invitation and smiled. Chloe was refusing to give up her status. She was planning to host this massive gala to prove to her elite friends that everything was fine. She wanted to show the world that the rumors of their financial ruin were simply malicious gossip spread by a jealous sister. It was a bold move. It was also incredibly stupid. They did not realize that I had already frozen their accounts. They did not realize that the vendors they hired for the gala were demanding upfront payment. And most importantly, they did not realize that they were planning to host this event at a property they no longer had the right to enter. I called Marcus into my office. "Marcus," I said, handing him the printed invitation. "I think it is time we pay a little visit to the Oak Ridge Country Club. I want to make sure my mother and sister understand the new rules of engagement." Marcus grinned, cracking his knuckles. "I will get the cars ready, Ms. Jada." The Oak Ridge Country Club was a sprawling estate with manicured lawns, pristine tennis courts, and a clubhouse that looked like a southern plantation mansion. It was the epicenter of fake wealth and respectability politics. It was the place where my mother had spent decades trying to buy acceptance from people who secretly despised her. As my chauffeured car pulled up to the grand entrance, I could see the valet scrambling to open the doors. I stepped out wearing a sharp-tailored suit that screamed power and authority. Marcus and two other security guards flanked me as I walked up the marble steps. Inside the clubhouse, the atmosphere was buzzing with wealthy patrons sipping mimosas and gossiping. I knew exactly where to find Beatrice and Chloe. They were sitting at their usual table in the center of the main dining room, holding court with a group of elite socialites. They were laughing loudly, pretending they didn't have a care in the world. I watched them for a moment, letting the anticipation build. They were so wrapped up in their own delusion, they didn't even notice the manager of the country club approaching their table, accompanied by my security detail. I stayed back near this entrance, watching the scene unfold. I wanted to see the exact moment their carefully constructed world came crashing down around them. I wanted to see the look on their faces when they realized that the corporate slave they had mocked for 20 years was now the one holding the keys to their kingdom. The manager, a tall man with a nervous expression, cleared his throat. "Excuse me, Beatrice," he said softly. "We have a slight problem." Beatrice waved her hand dismissively, not even looking at him. "Not now, Richard. We are busy discussing the charity gala. Just put whatever it is on my tab. I am afraid I cannot do that." Beatrice, the manager, replied, his voice trembling slightly. "Your membership has been officially revoked." Chloe dropped her mimosa glass. It shattered on the floor, spilling orange juice and champagne over her designer shoes. "What did you just say?" she shrieked. The manager took a step back. "Your membership has been revoked," he repeated. "We received notice this morning that your checks have bounced and your dues are unpaid. Furthermore, the property management company has instructed us to escort you off the premises immediately." Beatrice stood up, her face turning a deep shade of red. "Do you know who I am?" she screamed, pointing a finger at the manager. "I have been a member here for 30 years. I demand to speak to the new owner of this club immediately." The heavy double doors to the dining room opened wide. I walked in, my heels clicking sharply against the polished hardwood floor. The entire room fell silent. Everyone turned to look at me. "You are looking at her mother," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the quiet room. "And you are trespassing on my property." The absolute silence that followed my declaration was heavy enough to suffocate everyone sitting at the table. Beatrice stared at me, her jaw slack, her perfectly painted lips parted in sheer disbelief. The wealthy socialites sitting around her suddenly looked extremely uncomfortable, shifting in their plush velvet chairs. Chloe was still staring at the puddle of spilled mimosa on the floor, breathing heavily, as if she had just been physically struck by a moving vehicle. Beatrice let out a high-pitched, nervous laugh. She looked around at her elite friends, waving a hand dismissively in my direction. "Do not pay any attention to my estranged daughter," she announced, her voice shaking slightly. "Jada has a very sick sense of humor. She is just a disgruntled bank employee who thinks she can walk into a private establishment and cause a scene. Richard, please call the actual security team and have this delusional woman removed before she ruins our charity gala planning meeting." Richard, the club manager, did not move to call anyone. He stood firmly next to Marcus, looking down at his clipboard. He refused to make eye contact with my mother. "Beatrice." "I am afraid Ms. Jada is telling the absolute truth," Richard said, his voice tight with anxiety. "The Oak Ridge Country Club Board of Directors held an emergency meeting late last night. The club has been operating at a massive deficit for the past 3 years. Vanguard Financial acquired our primary debt portfolio this morning. Ms. Jada is the acting executive owner of the entire property." My mother slammed her hands down on the table, rattling the fine china. "That is impossible!" she shrieked, her carefully crafted country club persona completely disintegrating. "I have been a premier member of this establishment for 30 years. I built the diversity committee. I brought high society black excellence to this historically white club. You cannot just revoke my membership because this ungrateful corporate drone bought some paperwork. Do you know who I am? I am Beatrice. I demand to speak to the board chairman immediately." I walked slowly toward her table, my tailored suit projecting total authority. "There is no board chairman anymore, Mother," I stated coldly. "I dissolved the board at 9 o'clock this morning. I am the sole governing authority of this property. And as for your 30-year legacy of black excellence, let us talk about how you actually funded that membership." I gestured for Marcus to hand me a specific tablet. I tapped the screen and held it up for the entire table of socialites to see. "When I was a child growing up in that house, you ignored me. You refused to pay for my college applications because you said you needed the money to maintain your social standing. You clawed your way into this elite circle by stepping on everyone, including your own daughter. But you never actually had the capital to sustain it." I swiped to the next screen on the tablet. "Your membership dues have been paid late every single month for the last 4 years," I revealed loudly enough for the neighboring tables to hear. "And for the past 6 months, you have not paid a single dime. You have been writing checks from Terrence's fake venture capital accounts. Those checks bounced, Mother. You owe this club $45,000 in back dues and dining tabs." The socialites at the table gasped in horror. One of them, a woman wearing a string of expensive pearls, scooted her chair away from Beatrice as if poverty was a contagious disease. Beatrice looked at the woman, her eyes wide with total panic. "It is a banking error," she stammered desperately. "Terrence is just transferring funds from an offshore account. We are highly liquid." Chloe jumped up from her chair, her face red with fury and humiliation. "You are a monster, Jada!" she screamed, pointing a shaking finger at me. "You come in here trying to destroy our charity gala? We are raising money for underprivileged youth today. We are doing important community work, while you are just a greedy corporate tyrant. You have no class. You never had any class. You just have dirty money." I turned my cold gaze to my sister, the golden child who had spent her entire life riding on the coattails of men who scammed their way through life. "You want to talk about the charity gala, Chloe?" I asked, stepping right up to her face. "Let us talk about it right now, because part of my corporate acquisition involved auditing the club's upcoming event ledger." I looked around at the wealthy women sitting at the table. "You ladies are all planning to write large donation checks tonight, correct?" I asked them directly. They nodded hesitantly. "Chloe told you this money was going to a foundation for urban youth development." I looked back at Chloe, who was suddenly looking very small and terrified. "I had my forensic accounting team look into that specific foundation an hour ago," I announced. "It does not exist. The tax identification number Chloe provided to the club belongs to a defunct shell company registered to Terrence. There is no charity. There are no underprivileged youth. You are planning to collect hundreds of thousands of dollars in donations from these women tonight to pay off your foreclosed house and Terrence's offshore gambling debts." The room erupted in outraged whispers. The women at the table looked at Chloe and Beatrice with absolute disgust. "You are going to steal from us," one of the socialites demanded, her voice rising in extreme anger. "You invited us here to scam us out of our money." Chloe burst into tears, shaking her head frantically. "No," she sobbed, wiping her eyes. "Terrence said it was a legitimate bridge loan. He said we would pay the charity back once his seed round closed. I did not know it was a scam. I swear I did not know anything about it." "Ignorance is not a valid excuse for wire fraud, Chloe," I said sharply. "You sat on that rented yacht in Cabo drinking champagne paid for with my son's stolen college fund, and you texted him that I was a failure. You told him that your fake criminal lifestyle was the epitome of success. Now you are standing in a puddle of your own spilled drink crying because the real world finally caught up to you." Beatrice grabbed her napkin and dabbed at her sweating forehead. She was hyperventilating, her eyes darting frantically toward the exit. "Jada, please," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the angry murmurs of the club members. "Do not do this. Do not ruin my reputation here. These people are my entire life. If you do this, I will have absolutely nothing left. I will be a laughingstock in this city." "You ruined your own reputation, Mother," I replied, completely devoid of sympathy. "You chose to value respectability politics over actual integrity. You chose to worship a con artist's son-in-law just because he drove a flashy car while you treated your hardworking daughter like dirt. You made your bed, and now you are going to lie in it." I turned to Richard, the club manager. "Richard, please inform security to begin the eviction protocol," I ordered. "These two women are no longer permitted on the premises. They are to be escorted to the perimeter immediately. If they attempt to return, you are to call the police and have them arrested for criminal trespassing." Richard nodded briskly. "Yes, Ms. Jada," he said, signaling to the two large security guards standing near the dining room entrance. The guards began walking purposefully toward the table. Beatrice stood up her chair, scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. She grabbed her purse, her hands shaking so violently she could barely hold the strap. "You will burn in hell for this, Jada," she spat, her face twisted with a level of hatred I had never seen before. "You are destroying your own family. You are destroying our legacy. I curse the day you were born." I did not flinch. "Your curse means absolutely nothing to me, Mother," I said, my voice steady and cold. "I built my own legacy while you were busy faking yours." The security guards reached the table. "Mom, it is time to leave," one of them said firmly, gesturing toward the main exit doors. Chloe grabbed her mother's arm, sobbing hysterically. She looked around at her former friends, pleading for someone to intervene. Please, she begged the women at the table. Do not let her do this to us. We are good people. Not a single woman moved. They simply looked away, sipping their mimosas, refusing to associate with exposed frauds. The brutal reality of high society was that loyalty only lasted as long as the money did, and Beatrice and Chloe had officially run out of both. As the guards began to usher them toward the heavy double doors, I noticed something odd. The bright sunlight catching the edge of Beatrice's expensive tailored dress revealed a small white tag sticking out from the back collar. I looked closely at Chloe's designer outfit and noticed a similar tag peeking out from the side seam of her expensive skirt. They were not just wearing clothes they could not afford. They were wearing clothes they fully intended to return to the store tomorrow morning. The sheer pathetic nature of their existence was on full display. They were attempting to scam their wealthy friends while wearing stolen confidence. They thought they could walk out of the club with some small shred of dignity intact, maintaining the illusion that they were simply the victims of a cruel corporate sister. But I was not going to let them leave with any illusions remaining. They needed to be stripped bare in front of the exact audience they had worshipped for decades. I stepped forward, blocking their path to the exit. I held up my hand, stopping the security guards in their tracks. "Wait," I said loudly, making sure my voice carried to every single corner of the crowded dining room. The guests who had turned back to their meals stopped and looked over. The entire room fell into a hushed, expectant silence. I looked my mother directly in the eyes, a cold, calculated smirk forming on my lips. "Before you leave my property," I announced, projecting my voice so every socialite could hear every single word, "I think it is only fair that we address the final piece of your high society wardrobe." I reached out and took hold of the white tag sticking out of my mother's collar. "I am going to expose exactly how deep your fake wealth truly runs. Right here and right now, I will show them all your absolute truth." The sheer audacity of my mother wearing a stolen dress while trying to scam her high society friends out of hundreds of thousands of dollars was almost too perfect. I had known Beatrice and Chloe were desperate to maintain their fake upper-class image, but I never imagined they would stoop to literal shoplifting. I stepped right up to Beatrice, making sure every woman at the table had a clear, unobstructed view of the white price tag dangling from her collar. I took the tag between my index finger and thumb, holding it up like a piece of criminal evidence. "Look closely, ladies," I announced, my voice ringing out with absolute clarity. "The dress my mother is wearing tonight to host this fake charity gala is not hers. It belongs to the Neiman Marcus department store downtown. She tucked the tag inside so she could wear it tonight and return it tomorrow morning for a full refund. She literally cannot afford the clothes on her back." Beatrice slapped my hand away, her face contorting into a mask of pure, unadulterated panic. She reached behind her neck, frantically trying to tuck the white tag back under the collar of the silk dress, but her hands were shaking too badly. "Jada, stop it!" she hissed, her voice a desperate, vibrating whisper. "Stop embarrassing me in front of these people." I did not stop. I turned my attention directly to my sister Chloe. Chloe had been slowly trying to inch her way backward toward the exit doors, but my security detail immediately blocked her path. "And Chloe?" I continued, pointing directly at the side seam of her expensive tailored skirt. "Your tag is showing too. I guess Terrence's fake venture capital firm does not pay well enough for you to buy your own clothes either." Chloe froze, her eyes darting frantically toward the floor. The wealthy socialites sitting at the table were now openly staring at the tags. One of the women, a prominent local judge, let out a loud, disgusted scoff. She stood up from the table, grabbing her designer clutch. "This is absolutely pathetic," the judge declared, looking at Beatrice as if she were a piece of garbage on the bottom of her shoe. "You invited us here to steal our money while wearing stolen clothes. You are a complete fraud, Beatrice. I will make sure everyone in this city knows exactly who you really are." The judge turned on her heel and marched out of the dining room. The rest of the women at the table immediately followed her lead, scrambling to get away from Beatrice and Chloe as quickly as possible. Within 30 seconds, the entire table was empty, save for the half-empty mimosa glasses and the shattered remains of Chloe's drink on the floor. Beatrice watched her entire social circle walk out the door. The respectability, the status, the fake upper-class image she had spent 30 years meticulously crafting had been completely annihilated in less than 2 minutes. She turned back to me, her eyes blazing with a kind of wild, unhinged fury. She raised her hand high in the air and swung it toward my face with all the force she could muster. "You ruined everything." She screamed, her voice cracking with hysteria. "You destroyed this family's legacy. I will kill you, Jada. I will kill you for what you just did to me." I did not flinch. I did not step back. I simply raised my left arm and caught her wrist effortlessly in midair. My grip was like a steel vise. Beatrice gasped, struggling to pull her hand back, but I held her firmly in place. I looked down at her, feeling absolutely nothing but cold, clinical detachment. "You never cared about legacy, Mother," I said, staring directly into her panicked eyes. "You only cared about looking better than the neighbors. You cared more about impressing strangers at a country club than you cared about your own pregnant daughter. You threw me out on the street to protect this fake image. Now look at you. You have no money. You have no house. You have no friends. And you do not even own the dress you are wearing. You are exactly what you always accused me of being, a complete failure." I let go of her wrist, shoving her hand away in disgust. Beatrice stumbled backward, crashing into a chair and collapsing onto the floor. She sat there, surrounded by the spilled champagne, weeping loudly and uncontrollably. Her perfectly styled hair was a mess. Her expensive makeup was running down her cheeks. She looked broken. Chloe dropped to her knees beside her mother, sobbing hysterically. "Jada, please," she begged, her voice high and whiny. "Please do not do this. Terrence is going to go to jail. We are going to be homeless. You have millions of dollars. You can fix this. You can give us a loan. We will pay you back, I swear. We will do whatever you want." I looked at my sister, the golden child who had spent her entire life riding on the coattails of toxic men. "You want a loan, Chloe?" I asked, my voice devoid of any sympathy. "Why don't you ask Terrence to wire you some money from his offshore sportsbook? Or better yet, why don't you go ask Darius to help you? I am sure the two of them can hustle up enough cash to buy you a tent." I turned back to Richard, the club manager, who was still standing nearby, looking completely shocked by the scene playing out in his dining room. "Richard," I said smoothly, adjusting my suit jacket, "please have security escort these two women off my property immediately. If they resist, call the local police department and press charges for trespassing and attempted fraud." Richard nodded briskly, recovering his professional demeanor. "Right away, Ms. Jada," he replied. He signaled to the security guards, who immediately moved forward, grabbing Beatrice and Chloe by the arms and hauling them roughly to their feet. "Get your hands off me," Beatrice shrieked, struggling against the large security guard. "I will sue this entire establishment. I will have your jobs." The guards ignored her, dragging both women toward the heavy double doors. Chloe was crying so hard she was hyperventilating, her expensive designer shoes dragging across the polished hardwood floor. I stood in the center of the dining room, watching them being physically thrown out of the country club they had worshipped for decades. The silence in the room was absolute. The remaining club members stared at me in awe, realizing exactly who was in charge now. I turned and walked out through the private executive entrance, my security team flanking me. I stepped out into the bright afternoon sunlight, taking a deep breath of the crisp air. The financial cancer of my toxic family had been completely eradicated. But as I walked toward my waiting chauffeured car, my phone buzzed with an urgent text message from Aaliyah. "Miss Jada," the text read, "I am at the university library. Darius is here. He cornered me by my car. He is demanding money. Please help." My blood ran instantly cold. The deadbeat father of my son, the coward, who had run away from Marcus in my penthouse, had decided to target the weakest link. He knew he could not get to me. He knew he could not get to Malik, who was currently bagging groceries under strict supervision. So Darius had decided to go after the 19-year-old girl who had just been handed a $1 million grant on live national television. I typed a rapid response to Aaliyah. "Do not move. Do not give him anything. I am sending my security team right now." I looked at Marcus, who was opening the door to my car. "Marcus," I said, my voice tight with sudden urgency. "Darius is at the State University. He has cornered Aaliyah. Tell the driver to step on it. We are going to end this right now. Marcus's expression hardened instantly. He tapped his earpiece, relaying the orders to the rest of the security detail. Understood, Ms. Jada. We will be there in 10 minutes. The heavy armored town car sped through the city streets, running 2 red lights in the process. My mind was racing. Darius was desperate. He owed $40,000 in back child support and had active warrants out for his arrest. He knew Terrence was ruined and his meal ticket had evaporated. He was trying to extort a young college student because he thought she was an easy target. He thought Aaliyah was just a naive girl who would be intimidated by a loud, aggressive man from the streets. He had no idea who he was messing with. Aaliyah may have looked like a quiet, modest college student, but she was the daughter of my best friend. I had mentored her for years. I had taught her how to stand up for herself. I had taught her exactly how to handle predatory men who tried to take what was not theirs. As our car pulled up to the university campus, I saw them standing near the edge of the student parking lot. Darius had Aaliyah backed up against the side of her modest used sedan. He was leaning in close, pointing a finger in her face, his body language aggressive and threatening. Aaliyah was standing her ground, clutching her backpack tightly to her chest, but I could see the tension in her posture. "Stop the car!" I ordered the driver before we even fully pulled into a parking space. I threw open the door and stepped out, Marcus right behind me. "Darius!" I yelled, my voice echoing across the quiet parking lot. "Step away from her right now before I have my security team break both your arms." Darius spun around, startled by my sudden appearance. When he saw Marcus stepping out of the vehicle, his bravado vanished instantly. He took a quick step backward away from Aaliyah, holding his hands up in a placating gesture. "Jada, hey, now let us not overreact," Darius said, trying to force a casual smile. "I was just having a friendly conversation with the young lady here. Just congratulating her on her big grant money. I figured since we are basically family, she might want to help out her favorite uncle with a small loan. Just a little seed capital to get my new business off the ground." "You are not her family," I snapped, walking purposefully toward him. "You are a deadbeat parasite who preys on vulnerable women. You tried to use my son to extort me, and when that failed, you decided to harass a college student. You are pathetic, Darius." Aaliyah stepped out from behind her car. She didn't look terrified anymore. She looked at Darius with an expression of pure, unadulterated disgust. "He told me if I didn't give him $50,000, he would go to the local tabloids," Aaliyah told me, her voice surprisingly steady. "He said he would tell them I seduced the Vanguard board members to get the grant money. He said he would ruin my reputation before I even started my business." I glared at Darius. "You really are the lowest form of garbage I have ever encountered," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "You try to blackmail a 19-year-old girl with baseless lies because you are too lazy to work a real job." Darius scowled, his fake smile dropping completely. "Look, Jada, I am broke," he spat. "Terrence screwed me over. I have debt collectors looking for me in 3 different states. I just need a little cash to get out of town. The girl has $1 million. She will not even miss 50 grand. It is a drop in the bucket." Aaliyah let out a short, sharp laugh. She unzipped her backpack and pulled out a thick manila folder. It looked remarkably similar to the folders my legal team used. "You think I just have $1 million sitting in a checking account?" Darius, Aaliyah asked, her voice dripping with confidence. "You think I'm going to use that money to buy designer clothes and fund deadbeat extortionists? You clearly do not know who my mentor is." Aaliyah walked right up to Darius and shoved a legal document directly into his chest. "I didn't buy clothes with my grant money," Darius, Aaliyah stated, her eyes locking onto his. "I invested it." Miss Jada's legal team helped me execute my first real estate acquisition this morning. I bought a commercial property portfolio. Specifically, I bought the dilapidated apartment building on 8th Street. The exact building where you currently rent a basement unit. Darius stared at the paper in his hands. His eyes widened in absolute shock as he read the deed transfer documents. He looked from the paper to Aaliyah, and back again, his mouth opening and closing in stunned silence. "That is right," Darius. Aaliyah continued, a fierce, triumphant smile spreading across her face. "I am your new landlord, and you are currently 3 months behind on your rent, so I am officially serving you with a 30-day eviction notice. You are a squatter on my property, Have your trash packed by Friday because I am sending the sheriff to throw you out onto the street." Darius stood completely frozen on the asphalt, clutching the eviction notice in his trembling hands. The crisp afternoon wind blew across the university parking lot, but he was sweating profusely. He looked down at the official legal seal on the document and then back up at the 19-year-old girl he had just tried to extort. His mind could not process the brutal reality of the situation. He had come here expecting to bully a naive college student into handing over a massive cut of her grant money. Instead, he had just been legally informed that he was about to be homeless by the very girl he thought he could easily intimidate. "You cannot do this to me!" Darius stammered, his voice cracking under the weight of his rising panic. "You cannot just buy my building and throw me out. There are tenant protection laws in this city. You need a valid reason to evict me." Aaliyah let out a sharp, genuinely amused laugh. She crossed her arms, leaning back against the side of her modest used sedan. "I do have a valid reason, Darius," she replied, her tone dripping with absolute confidence. "You have not paid your rent in 3 months. The previous landlord was already filing the paperwork before my holding company acquired the property this morning. I simply expedited the process. Miss Jada taught me that when you acquire distressed real estate, the first thing you do is clean house and remove the toxic assets. You are a toxic asset, Darius." I stood a few feet away, watching Aaliyah handle the situation flawlessly. My heart swelled with an overwhelming sense of pride. I had spent years mentoring this girl, teaching her how to navigate a world that constantly tried to tear young Black women down. I had taught her how to read financial statements, how to negotiate contracts, and most importantly, how to stand her ground against predatory men who thought they could take whatever they wanted. Seeing her stand up to the man who had abandoned my son was one of the most satisfying moments of my entire life. Darius crumpled the eviction notice in his fist. His panic quickly morphed into a desperate, cornered anger. He took a threatening step forward, but Marcus instantly shifted his weight, blocking Darius from getting any closer to Aaliyah. Darius glared at my security guard before turning his furious eyes back to the 19-year-old college student. "You think you are so smart, little girl?" Darius spat, pointing a shaking finger at her. "You think buying my building makes you untouchable? You are forgetting one crucial detail. I still know the truth about how you got that $1 million grant. I know you did not earn it by scrubbing floors and tutoring kids." Aaliyah raised an eyebrow, looking completely unbothered. "Is that so?" she asked. "And how exactly did I earn it?" Darius turned to look at me, a malicious, triumphant sneer forming on his face. He thought he had found the ultimate leverage. He thought he had finally figured out a way to manipulate the situation to his advantage to get exactly what he wanted. "I am going straight to the press," Darius announced loudly, making sure a few passing college students could hear him. "I am going to call every single tabloid and gossip blog in the city. I am going to tell them that the brand new CEO of Vanguard Financial gave $1 million of company money to a teenager because that teenager seduced the board of directors. I will tell them you slept your way to the top, Aaliyah. I will tell them Jada orchestrated the whole thing to secure her promotion. The media will eat it up. The scandal will ruin your new business before it even starts, and it will force the Vanguard board to fire Jada for gross misconduct." He crossed his arms, puffing out his chest, believing he had just delivered a fatal checkmate. "So here is my final offer," he declared. "You rip up that eviction notice right now. You sign the deed of the apartment building over to me free and clear. And you wire $50,000 into my account by 5 o'clock today. If you do that, I will keep my mouth shut. If you refuse, your reputations will be completely destroyed by tomorrow morning." Aaliyah did not flinch. She did not cower. She threw her head back and laughed right in his face. It was a loud, joyous laugh that echoed across the pavement. Darius looked taken aback, his arrogant posture faltering under her intense gaze. "You are going to go to the press?" Aaliyah asked, wiping a tear of mirth from her eye. "You are going to call the tabloids and tell them a 19-year-old college student seduced a roomful of elderly Wall Street billionaires. Do you honestly think anyone is going to believe a word that comes out of your mouth, Darius?" "Why wouldn't they?" Darius countered, his voice suddenly defensive. "People love a corporate scandal. They love seeing wealthy elites fall from grace." I decided it was time to step in and put the final nail in his coffin. I walked past Marcus and stood directly beside Aaliyah, presenting a united front. "They will not believe you, Darius," I said coldly, "because you have absolutely zero credibility. You are a deadbeat father with active warrants out for your arrest in the state of Georgia. You owe over $40,000 in back child support to 2 different women. You were just caught on tape in my penthouse admitting that you helped Terrence launder stolen money from a minor's trust fund. Do you really think a reputable news organization is going to print your ridiculous slander when I hand them your entire criminal record?" Darius swallowed hard, his eyes darting around the parking lot. "The tabloids do not care about my background," he insisted weakly. "They just care about the clicks. They will print the allegations." "Let them print the allegations," I replied, stepping closer to him. "Let them print every single word you say. Because the moment they do, my corporate legal team will file a massive defamation lawsuit against both you and the publication. I have an army of attorneys on retainer, Darius. We will subpoena your phone records. We will subpoena your bank accounts. We will drag you into depositions for months. And when we win the lawsuit, we will garnish every single penny you ever make for the rest of your miserable life." Aaliyah pulled another document out of her backpack. She held it up for Darius to see. Furthermore, Aaliyah added, her voice sharp and commanding. "What you just attempted to do is legally defined as extortion. You demanded money and real estate in exchange for keeping quiet about false allegations. I had my phone recording the entire conversation the moment I saw you waiting by my car." Aaliyah pulled her smartphone out of her jacket pocket, showing him the active recording app. The digital timer was ticking upward, capturing every single threat he had made. "So you have 2 choices," Darius, Aaliyah said, echoing the exact same tone I had used to dismantle Terrence in my office. "You can take your eviction notice, pack your garbage bags, and disappear from this city forever. Or I can hand this audio recording over to the local police department right now and have you arrested for extortion and blackmail on top of your outstanding warrants in Georgia. I am sure the judge will love hearing how you tried to shake down a college student." Darius looked at the recording app. He looked at the eviction notice crushed in his fist. He looked at me and then at Aaliyah. The realization of his absolute defeat finally washed over his face. He was not a criminal mastermind. He was just a pathetic, broken man who had spent his entire life trying to take shortcuts and exploit the hard work of women. Now he was facing the devastating consequences of his own toxic behavior. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. His shoulders slumped in total defeat. He dropped his gaze to the asphalt, completely humiliated and thoroughly broken. "Marcus," I said, my voice carrying a quiet, lethal authority, "please escort this man off the campus property. If he attempts to contact Aaliyah again, or if he comes within 500 feet of my son, I want you to personally deliver him to the nearest police precinct." Marcus nodded, cracking his knuckles with eager anticipation. "It would be my absolute pleasure, Miss Jada," he said. Marcus stepped forward and grabbed Darius roughly by the back of his cheap suit jacket. "Move it," Marcus growled, pushing Darius forward. Darius stumbled, his cheap sneakers scraping against the pavement. He did not look back. He just clutched his crumpled eviction notice and let Marcus march him away toward the edge of the campus. He was left entirely destitute, standing on the sidewalk with nothing but the clothes on his back, and 30 days to pack up his miserable life. The parasite had been permanently removed. I turned to Aaliyah, feeling a massive wave of relief. "Are you okay?" I asked, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "I am perfectly fine." Miss Jada, Aaliyah smiled, her eyes bright with genuine triumph. "You taught me well. I knew exactly how to handle him." I hugged her tightly, feeling incredibly proud of the strong, independent woman she was becoming. "You did amazing, Aaliyah," I told her. "Now go to class. You have a business empire to build." As my town car drove me back to the Vanguard Financial headquarters, I looked out the window, feeling a deep sense of closure. Darius was gone. Beatrice and Chloe had been exposed and humiliated. Terrence was completely bankrupted and facing potential federal charges. The fake respectability politics and toxic entitlement that had plagued my family for decades had been utterly dismantled. But the final desperate act of this family drama was about to unfold. Chloe had lost her fake charity gala. She had lost her social standing at the country club. She had lost her foreclosed mansion, and her husband was entirely ruined. She was backed into a corner with nowhere left to turn, and I knew exactly where she would go when she realized she had completely run out of viable options. Sure enough, as my chauffeured car pulled up to the massive glass doors of the Vanguard Financial Building, my phone buzzed with an urgent text message from my executive assistant. Ms. Jada, the text read, "Your sister Chloe is currently waiting in the main lobby. She is crying hysterically and causing a minor scene. She says she is absolutely desperate. She is demanding to see you to beg for a corporate job. She claims she has nowhere else to turn." I smiled, stepping out of the town car and buttoning my tailored blazer. It was finally time for my golden child sister to face her own brutal reality check. I walked through the revolving glass doors of Vanguard Financial and immediately heard the shrill sound of my sister's voice echoing across the marble lobby. Chloe was standing at the front reception desk, arguing with two security guards. She was wearing a trench coat over a hastily assembled outfit that looked wrinkled. Her hair was pulled back into a messy ponytail, and she was clutching a thin manila folder to her chest. She looked absolutely frantic. "I am the Chief Executive Officer's sister," Chloe yelled at the receptionist, waving her folder around. "I demand you let me up to her office right now. I do not need an appointment. We are family." I signaled for my security detail to stand back as I approached the reception desk. "We might share the same last name, Chloe," I said, my voice slicing through her hysterical demands. "But in this building, you are just another uninvited guest, causing a security disturbance." Chloe spun around. Her eyes were red-rimmed and puffy. The smug arrogance she always carried had completely evaporated. "Jada," she gasped, rushing toward me. "Jada, please, you have to talk to me. Terrence is gone. He packed a bag last night and just left. The bank locked the doors to the house this morning. I have absolutely nowhere to go. I need a job. I need money. Please." I looked at her coldly. I did not feel a single ounce of pity. "You want a job, Chloe?" I asked. "Fine. We are going to do this the right way. Follow me." I led her past the security checkpoint and into a private glass-walled conference room on the ground floor. I did not invite her up to my executive suite. I was not going to give her the satisfaction of seeing my domain. I texted my head of human resources and my lead corporate attorney, Sarah, instructing them to join me immediately. If Chloe wanted to ask for employment at my firm, she was going to go through a rigorous formal corporate interview process. "Sit down," I commanded, pointing to a stiff chair on the opposite side of the long conference table. Chloe sat down nervously, clutching her manila folder. Within 2 minutes, Sarah and the head of human resources walked into the room carrying notepads and pens. They sat down flanking me, forming an intimidating panel of corporate authority. "What is this?" Chloe asked, looking at the other two women with wide, panicked eyes. "Jada, I just need a position. You are the CEO. You can just hire me. I can be your assistant or a consultant or something. Just put me on the payroll." I leaned forward, folding my hands on the table. "Vanguard Financial does not hand out charity positions to unqualified applicants, Chloe," I stated flatly. "We are a multi-billion-dollar investment firm. If you want a job, you have to interview for it just like everyone else. Hand over your resume." Chloe swallowed hard. Her hands shook as she opened her manila folder and slid a single piece of paper across the table. I picked it up and scanned it. Sarah and the HR director leaned in to look at it as well. It was one of the most pathetic resumes I had ever seen in my 20 years in the corporate world. "Let us review your qualifications." "Chloe," I began, adopting my most clinical, professional tone. "You are 39 years old. Under education, you have listed a bachelor's degree in art history from a mid-tier university, a degree you obtained 17 years ago. Since then, you have absolutely zero formal work experience listed. No internships, no corporate roles, no freelance consulting. Your employment history section is entirely blank." Chloe shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "I have been busy, Jada," she protested. "I have been managing a high-net-worth household. I hosted charity events. I organized large-scale networking dinners for Terrence and his investors. I managed a staff of housekeepers and landscapers. That takes organizational skills. That takes leadership. I handed the resume to Sarah, who looked at it with thinly veiled disgust. Managing a household paid for by stolen money and fraudulent credit cards does not count as corporate leadership, Chloe, I replied sharply. Hiring a caterer for a fake charity gala is not equivalent to managing a financial portfolio. You have zero marketable skills. You do not know how to use standard accounting software. You have no client acquisition experience. You have spent your entire adult life relying on your looks and other people's money to survive. But I learned fast. Chloe begged, her voice pitching higher. I am smart, Jada. I can do whatever you need me to do. Just give me a management position. I need a salary that can cover an apartment in a good neighborhood. I cannot live in the slums. I have a certain standard of living to maintain. I let out a harsh laugh. You really are delusional, Chloe. You are sitting here completely bankrupt, begging for a job from the sister you mocked, and you still think you are entitled to a high-class lifestyle. You still think you are above everyone else. I leaned back in my chair, keeping my eyes locked on her panicking face. You called me a boring desk worker, Chloe, I reminded her. You told my son that grinding for 20 years was for failures. You told him that real success was marrying a flashy man with a leased sports car. You built your entire identity around putting me down to make yourself feel superior. And now that your fake venture capitalist husband has abandoned you to run from the feds, you expect me to just hand you a six-figure salary? I am your sister, Chloe cried, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. You cannot just leave me with nothing. Mom is staying at a cheap motel and will not even answer my calls. Terrence took whatever cash we had left. I have $30 in my checking account, Jada. Please, I am begging you. I will do anything. I looked at the HR director and nodded. The HR director slid a standard employment contract across the table toward Chloe. You said you will do anything, I stated, my voice deadly serious. Good, because I am not going to give you a management position. I am not going to let you anywhere near my clients, my financial records, or my executive team. You are completely unqualified for any corporate role in this building. However, Vanguard Financial does have one open position that requires absolutely no prior experience. Chloe looked down at the contract, her eyes widening with a glimmer of desperate hope. What is it? She asked eagerly. What is the job? It is a position on our night shift janitorial staff, I announced, watching the hope instantly drain from her face. You will work from 10 at night until 6 in the morning. You will empty the trash cans in the cubicles. You will vacuum the carpets. You will scrub the toilets in the executive washrooms. The pay is minimum wage. It includes basic health benefits after 90 days. And you will report directly to the shift supervisor. Chloe stared at me, her mouth hanging open in sheer horror. She looked at the employment contract, and then back at me as if I had just slapped her across the face. A janitor, she whispered, her voice trembling with absolute outrage. You want me to be a janitor? You want me to clean toilets in the building where you are the CEO? I tapped the employment contract with my index finger. I am offering you honest work, Chloe. I am offering you a chance to finally earn your own money instead of stealing it from teenagers or scamming it out of country club socialites. It is hard work, but it is clean money. Take it or leave it. The realization that I was entirely serious hit her like a physical blow. Her sorrow and desperation instantly transformed into explosive defensive rage. The arrogant, entitled golden child resurfaced, completely unable to accept the harsh reality of her new circumstances. I am not a janitor, Chloe screamed, jumping up from her chair and slapping the employment contract away. The paper fluttered onto the floor. I have a degree. I am a respectable woman. I am not going to scrub toilets for you so you can gloat and mock me every day. You are sick, Jada. You are a sick, twisted person. You orchestrated all of this just to humiliate me. I remained perfectly still. I orchestrated nothing. Chloe, I replied coldly. You and Terrence dug your own graves. I just handed you the shovels. I offered you a legitimate job. You think you are too good for honest labor. That tells me everything I need to know. I turned to the HR director. Withdraw the offer I instructed. The applicant has declined the position. Chloe grabbed her empty manila folder, her face red with furious tears. You are going to regret this, Jada, she shrieked, pointing a shaking finger at me. I will find a way back on top. I do not need your minimum wage garbage. I will find another investor. I will find a way to ruin you. Get out of my building, Chloe, I commanded, my voice dropping to a dangerous, unyielding tone. And if you ever show your face here again, I will have you arrested for trespassing. Chloe let out a frustrated, enraged scream. She turned on her heel and stormed toward the glass doors of the conference room. She yanked the door open so hard it slammed against the stopper. She marched out into the main lobby, stomping her feet furiously, completely blinded by her own temper. I stood up from the conference table, watching her storm out. As Chloe marched blindly toward the main revolving doors, she crashed forcefully into someone who was just walking into the building. Chloe stumbled backward, letting out an angry curse. Watch where you are going, she snapped aggressively, smoothing down her wrinkled coat. Then she looked up and froze completely. I walked out of the conference room and stood on the mezzanine looking down at the lobby. The person Chloe had just bumped into was Malik, my 15-year-old son. Malik was not wearing the expensive designer clothes Terrence had bought him. He was not wearing the flashy limited edition sneakers. He was wearing a dark green polo shirt, a pair of standard khaki pants, and a heavy canvas apron. Pinned to the front of his apron was a plastic name tag bearing the logo of the local grocery store on Fifth Avenue. He was holding a brown paper bag containing his lunch. He had just finished a grueling 8-hour shift bagging groceries and stocking shelves. He looked exhausted. There were dark circles under his eyes and his hands looked rough, but he also looked grounded. He looked real. He had walked 30 blocks from the grocery store to my office building just to see me. Chloe stared at Malik, her eyes wide with disbelief. Malik, she gasped, looking at his uniform. What are you wearing? Why are you dressed like a common laborer? Where are the clothes we bought you? Malik looked at his aunt. He looked at the woman who had convinced him to abandon his mother. The woman who had told him that real black excellence meant leasing yachts and looking down on working people. He looked at her frantic, disheveled appearance, and then he looked down at his own work apron. A profound transformation happened in that exact moment. The illusion had been permanently shattered. Chloe stared at Malik, her eyes wide with sheer disbelief. She looked at his dark green polo shirt, his heavy canvas apron, and the plastic name tag pinned to his chest. This was not the arrogant teenager who had toasted with champagne on a rented yacht in Cabo. This was a young man who had just finished an exhausting 8-hour shift, bagging groceries and pushing shopping carts. Chloe reached out and grabbed his arm, her manicured nails digging into the rough fabric of his uniform. Malik, she gasped, her voice high and frantic. What are you doing dressed like a common laborer? Where are the designer clothes Terrence bought for you? Why are you carrying your lunch in a brown paper bag? You are the son of a multimillionaire CEO. You should not be walking around downtown looking like the help. Malik looked at his aunt. He looked at the woman who had spent his entire childhood whispering toxic lies into his ear. The woman who had convinced him that his mother was a boring desk worker and that real success meant leasing foreign cars and faking wealth on social media. He looked at her wrinkled trench coat, her messy ponytail, and the desperate, frantic energy radiating from her entire body. The illusion had been permanently shattered. He finally saw her for exactly what she was, a parasite who relied entirely on the hard work of others to survive. Chloe did not notice the profound change in his demeanor. She was too consumed by her own absolute desperation. She pulled him closer, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. Listen to me, Malik, she said, looking around the massive marble lobby to make sure the security guards were not listening. Terrence is gone. The bank locked me out of the house. Your mother just tried to force me to work as a night shift janitor. She has completely lost her mind. She is trying to destroy our family legacy. But you can help me. You live in her old apartment, right? You have access to her things. I need you to let me stay with you for a few weeks. And I need you to get some cash from her penthouse. She leaves money around, right? Just take a few $1,000s. She will not even notice it is missing. We can use it to get back on our feet and show her she cannot treat us like this. Malik gently but firmly grabbed Chloe by the wrist and removed her hand from his arm. He took a deliberate step back, putting physical distance between himself and his toxic aunt. "I do not live in the penthouse, Aunt Chloe." Malik said, his voice calm and incredibly steady. "I have not stepped foot in that penthouse since the day you and Uncle Terrence got thrown out. I live in a tiny one-bedroom apartment in the South Ward, and I pay my own utility bills using the money I make bagging groceries and mopping up spills in aisle 4. Chloe stared at him as if he were speaking a foreign language. "You are actually working!" she shrieked, her voice echoing off the marble walls of the lobby. "Jada is actually making you scrub floors. That is completely insane. She is abusing you, Malik. She has billions of dollars. You do not have to live like a peasant." Malik shook his head, a sad, knowing smile forming on his lips. "I am not living like a peasant, Aunt Chloe," he corrected her. "I am living like a man. For the first time in my entire life, I am actually proud of myself. When I first started working at the store, I hated it. My feet ached, my back hurt, and I was furious at my mom. I thought she was just punishing me because she was bitter. But then I got my very first paycheck. It was barely enough to cover my groceries for the week, but I earned it. I stood on my own 2 feet for 8 hours a day, and I earned every single penny. I didn't have to lie for it. I didn't have to steal it from a college trust fund. I didn't have to lease an image to impress strangers on the internet." Malik stood up a little taller, adjusting the canvas apron around his waist. "You and Uncle Terrence told me that Mom was a failure because she worked at a desk for 20 years. Malik continued, his voice growing stronger with every word. "You told me that real Black excellence meant taking shortcuts and hustling the system. But you were the failures. You were the ones living a massive lie. Mom worked 80 hours a week to make sure I had a roof over my head. She sacrificed her own happiness to build a real solid foundation. She took all the insults and the blatant disrespect from you and Grandma Beatrice, and she never let it break her spirit. That is what real power looks like." Chloe covered her ears, shaking her head violently. "Stop it!" she screamed, her face turning bright red. "I am not going to stand here and be lectured by a teenager wearing a grocery store apron. I am high society. I am a respectable elite woman. You have been totally brainwashed by your vindictive mother." Malik looked at her with pure, unadulterated pity. "You are not high society, Aunt Chloe," he said quietly. "You are just a beggar wearing a stolen dress. Do not ever ask me to steal from my mother again. And do not ever contact me again. I am completely done with you." Malik turned his back on her and walked purposefully toward the front security desk to sign in for his scheduled meeting with me. Chloe stood in the center of the lobby, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. She let out one final frustrated shriek before turning around and running out the revolving glass doors, disappearing into the crowded city streets. High above the lobby, standing on the glass-enclosed mezzanine, I watched the entire interaction unfold. A quiet, profound smile of absolute pride spread across my face. I had heard every single word my son had said. My tough love had actually worked. The grueling night shifts, the tiny apartment, the strict financial cutoff had stripped away the toxic entitlement his family had poisoned him with. He had finally learned the true value of a hard-earned dollar. He had finally become the honorable young man I always knew he could be. Malik had passed the ultimate test. My heart swelled with a fierce protective love. The generational curse of fake wealth and respectability politics had been broken forever in my family. But my work was not quite finished yet. I turned away from the glass balcony and walked back toward my executive office suite. The final nail in the coffin for the parasites who had tried to destroy my life was yet to come. The ultimate financial reckoning was scheduled for tomorrow morning. I was going to make absolutely certain that Beatrice and Chloe could never ever rebuild their fraudulent lives in this city again. I sat down at my heavy mahogany desk and pulled up the finalized liquidation documents. I reviewed the foreclosure protocols for the remaining assets. I had already instructed my legal department to seize every last piece of property connected to Terrence and his fake venture capital firm. We were going to pull the expensive rugs right out from under their feet in broad daylight. Tomorrow, the entire city would watch as the movers cleared out the fake luxury items they had flaunted for so long. There would be no mercy. There would be no second chances. There would only be absolute accountability. The reckoning was imminent, and I was ready to deliver the final crushing blow to close this dark chapter of my life forever. I took a deep breath, savoring the incredible peace that comes with total financial domination. I picked up my phone and dialed Aliyah to check on her progress with the new commercial property. She answered on the first ring, her voice bubbling with genuine excitement. "Miss Jada, the renovations are already underway," she reported happily. "We are converting the building into affordable housing for single mothers who want to go back to school." I smiled, feeling a deep warmth in my chest. "That is brilliant, Aliyah," I told her. "You are doing exactly what this community needs, building real wealth to uplift others, instead of stepping on them to look good." We chatted for a few more minutes before I ended the call. My legacy was finally secure. I had successfully protected my son and empowered a brilliant young woman. The toxic cycle was completely dead and buried. My future was bright, clear, and undeniably mine. I carefully closed my heavy laptop, feeling completely victorious today. The morning of the final liquidation was brisk and clear. The sky over the city was a brilliant, unbroken blue, reflecting off the massive glass windows of the Vanguard Financial Building. I sat in the back of my chauffeured town car, a cup of hot black coffee resting in the cup holder. I watched the city streets glide past, feeling a profound sense of absolute closure. Today was the day the financial tumor was completely excised from my life. Today, Beatrice, Terrence, and Chloe would officially face the absolute ruin they had spent decades trying to avoid. My legal team had executed the eviction and foreclosure protocols simultaneously. It was a coordinated corporate strike designed to leave them with absolutely no room to maneuver. There would be no extensions. There would be no negotiations. There would only be the swift, brutal application of the law. The town car turned onto the quiet, tree-lined street of the upscale suburb where Chloe and Terrence had lived. The neighborhood was known for its massive manicured lawns and sweeping driveways. As we approached their property, I saw the massive moving trucks already parked out front. A team of men in matching uniforms was systematically removing every single piece of furniture from the house. I told the driver to slow down but not to stop. I did not want to speak to them. I did not want to hear their excuses or their pathetic apologies. I just wanted to witness the completion of my work. As the car rolled past the driveway, I saw them. Terrence was standing on the curb, his hands shoved deep into the pockets of a cheap windbreaker. He looked older, smaller, and entirely broken. The flashy, arrogant venture capitalist was completely gone, replaced by a man who had finally been crushed by the weight of his own massive lies. Chloe was sitting on a single garbage bag filled with her clothes. Her perfectly styled hair was a mess. She was staring blankly at the moving men as they carried her expensive dining room table out the front door. She looked up as my town car drove past. Our eyes met for a fraction of a second. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just looked at her with pure cold indifference. I saw the absolute despair in her eyes before the tinted windows of the car glided past, blocking her from my view forever. We continued toward the other side of town, heading toward the Oak Ridge neighborhood where my mother lived. Beatrice had spent 30 years cultivating an image of impenetrable upper-class respectability. She had destroyed her relationship with her own daughter just to maintain the illusion that she belonged in that world. Now that illusion was being forcefully dismantled in broad daylight. The scene at her house was even more chaotic. Beatrice was standing on her front porch screaming at the movers. She was waving her arms frantically, trying to stop them from loading her antique furniture into the truck. The neighbors, the very people she had spent decades trying to impress, were standing on their lawns openly watching the spectacle. As my car approached, I saw a tow truck backing into the driveway. The driver hooked up the shiny new Mercedes that Terrence had leased in Beatrice's name. Beatrice saw the tow truck and completely lost her mind. She ran down the porch steps, grabbing the driver's arm, sobbing and begging him to stop. The driver simply shook his head, handing her the official repossession paperwork. Beatrice collapsed onto the pristine green grass of her front lawn. She buried her face in her hands, weeping uncontrollably as the tow truck pulled her last remaining symbol of status out of the driveway and down the street. The neighbors whispered and pointed, shaking their heads in disgust. I watched her crying on the grass. The woman who had thrown me out when I was pregnant and vulnerable. The woman who had mocked my hard work and praised a con artist. She had finally reaped exactly what she sowed. I did not roll down the window. I did not offer a single word of comfort. I simply tapped the glass, signaling the driver to continue. We drove away, leaving the wreckage of their fake lives behind. The justice was silent, complete, and absolutely final. I was done with them. The scene shifted dramatically that evening. I was no longer watching a foreclosure. I was sitting in a private dining room at one of the finest restaurants in the city. The room was filled with warm light and the sound of genuine laughter. This was not a fake charity gala or a desperate attempt to impress strangers. This was a celebration of real, tangible success. Aaliyah sat across from me holding a glass of sparkling cider. She had officially launched her commercial real estate business that afternoon. She had used the grant money wisely, investing in distressed properties and rehabilitating them to provide affordable housing for the community. She was already negotiating her third acquisition. She was brilliant, driven, and fiercely loyal. Malik sat next to her. He was wearing a simple, clean button-down shirt. He had just finished his shift at the grocery store, but he had rushed over to join the dinner. His hands still looked a little rough from the manual labor, but his posture was completely different. He sat tall, looking at the people around the table with genuine respect. He had spent the last several months living in my old tiny apartment, taking the bus and working grueling shifts. He had paid his own rent. He had bought his own food. He had learned exactly what it takes to survive in the real world. The arrogant, entitled teenager was gone. In his place was a young man who understood the value of hard work and integrity. Malik raised his glass, looking directly at me. "Mom," he said, his voice steady and sincere, "I want to make a toast. I want to thank you. Not just for this dinner, but for everything. I know I messed up. I know I chose the wrong people, but you didn't give up on me. You forced me to grow up. You showed me what real strength looks like. I am so incredibly proud to be your son." I smiled, feeling a deep, overwhelming warmth in my chest. I raised my own glass of champagne. "I am proud of you too, Malik," I replied. "You earned your place at this table." We clinked our glasses together, the crystal ringing out with a clear, bright sound. I looked at Aaliyah, who was smiling broadly. I looked at Marcus, my loyal security chief, who was sitting at the end of the table, enjoying a massive steak. This was my real family. A family built on loyalty, mutual respect, and undeniable hard work. We had faced the parasites and the frauds, and we had emerged completely victorious. The generational curse of fake wealth and toxic respectability had been permanently broken. I took a sip of my champagne, savoring the crisp, sweet taste. I looked out the large window of the restaurant, watching the city skyline glittering in the night. The lights stretched out for miles, a testament to ambition and drive. I had built an empire from absolutely nothing, and I had protected the people who truly mattered. The financial war was over. The sweet revenge was finally complete.